Throw that bag away. Annie screamed, lunged forward, yanked the bag out of William Harrington's hand, and threw it straight into the deep pit. The bag hit the ground with a heavy thud, bounced once off a broken slab of concrete, then lay still among the exposed steel rods, gravel, and weeds growing at the bottom of the hole. William Harrington froze. Then his face darkened. "What the hell are you doing?" he roared. "Where did you come from? Do you have any idea what you just ruined?" Annie bent over, one hand pressed against her chest as she struggled to breathe. The old sack she used to collect cans and plastic bottles hung loosely from her shoulder. A few crushed aluminum cans spilled out and rolled across the concrete between them. "They lied to you," she said, her voice broken from lack of breath. "There are no files in that bag. Whatever you came here to find, it isn't in there." William's eyes narrowed. He was wearing an expensive dark suit, standing in the middle of an abandoned construction site. About 20 feet away from him sat an open silver suitcase, packed with stacks of cash. Dust swirled around his polished leather shoes. Behind him, two men dressed in black stood near the suitcase, their eyes tense. The taller man stepped toward Annie, his face hard with anger. "You little brat," he snapped. "Shut your mouth and go pick up your trash. That's the only thing you're good at." Annie flinched, but she did not move back. The second man raised both hands, his voice softer as he turned to William. "Mr. Harrington, don't let her confuse you. She's been wandering around this area since before you arrived. Maybe she's frightened, or maybe she was looking for copper wire or scrap metal. The deal is done. You gave us the money. We gave you the bag. Just take it and leave." "No," Annie said quickly. "Don't pick it up." William snapped his head toward her. "You have no right to give me orders." "I'm not giving you orders," Annie said. "I'm trying to stop you from taking something that was never meant to help you." The taller man pointed down into the pit. "You dropped it down there. Now climb down and get it." Annie stared at him. His voice dropped lower, more threatening. "You heard me. Climb down there and bring it back." William looked from the man to Annie. "Why would she do that?" "Because she just made this mess," the taller man said. "Because she ran in here like a lunatic and threw your property into a hole." The second man gave a small, polite laugh, so false it sounded rehearsed, as if he were trying to smooth everything over. "Mr. Harrington, let's not waste time. People like her make noise and then disappear. You and I still have business to settle. The bag is right down there. Tell her to get it, or I'll send someone down for it. Either way, you should take it and leave before this becomes more complicated." Annie shook her head. "It's already complicated. You're the ones who made it that way." The second man's smile stiffened. "You don't know anything." "I know what I heard." The taller man took another step toward her. "You didn't hear a thing. I heard you say there were no files in it." Something shifted in William's anger. The second man turned slightly, still keeping his voice calm. "She's guessing. Mr. Harrington, don't let a girl with a trash sack over her shoulder stop you from getting the evidence you paid for." Annie looked straight at William. "They said you would come here with a silver suitcase. They said you would toss the money over, and they would toss the black bag to you. They laughed because you thought there would be papers inside." The taller man's jaw tightened. William noticed, but it still was not enough for him to believe her. Annie continued, speaking faster because she could feel time slipping away. "I was hiding behind the bushes near the old trailer. I came here to collect cans and scrap. Then they drove up and started talking." The second man gently cut in. "Mr. Harrington, listen to how ridiculous this sounds. Are you really going to believe someone trespassing on private property?" Annie's face tightened. "This place has been abandoned for years. Everyone around here knows people come through." "And that makes you honest?" the taller man said. "No," Annie replied. "Telling the truth makes me honest." William looked down into the pit. The black bag lay at the bottom, half hidden in shadow. From where he stood, he could not see it clearly. The second man followed his gaze and immediately said, "Sir, the longer you stand here, the greater the risk becomes. You wanted the files. The files are in that bag. Take it and have your people examine them." That was the deal. Annie stepped between William and the edge of the pit. "Please," she said, "don't go down there, and don't let anyone bring it back to you." William's voice turned cold. "Why?" Annie hesitated. "I heard them mention your brother's name," she said. William went silent. The pleasant expression on the second man's face suddenly dropped. Annie swallowed hard. "Charles." The name landed like a weight. William's eyes did not leave her. What did you just say? They said that after today, Charles would get what he wanted. Annie looked at him, her voice trembling but clear. I don't know him. I don't know your family. But I heard that name. The taller man stepped forward. That's enough. Pick up your cans and get out of here before you regret it. Annie took one step back, but her voice stayed firm. No, not until he leaves that bag alone. The second man turned to William, his voice almost pleading now. Mr. Harrington, this is exactly why we asked for privacy. Strangers walk in, hear one name, and build an entire story around it. You're a businessman. You know how these things work. Take the bag, review the documents. If they are not what we promised, you know how to find us. William did not answer. Then, from deep inside the pit, a very small sound rose up. Beep. Everyone stopped. The sound was so faint it was almost swallowed by the wind whistling through the metal frame of the unfinished building. Annie's eyes widened. Did you hear that? William turned toward the foundation pit. The taller man glanced down too quickly, then immediately looked away. Beep, beep. The second man's gentle voice vanished for a moment. It's nothing, probably just some old equipment down there. There's no power here, Annie said. Beep, beep, beep. The beeping was faster now, steadier, thin and cold, rising from the dirt and broken concrete. William's expression changed, but suspicion still held him in place. The tallerman muttered, "We need to go." Annie pointed straight at him. See, he knows. The second man snapped. Shut up. No, Annie said. You told him I was crazy. You told him to pick it up. Now it's making that sound. And you won't even go near it. William slowly took one step back from the edge of the pit. The second man noticed and tried to use his soft voice again, though this time it no longer matched his face. Mr. Harrington, don't overreact. Let us handle it. We'll get the bag. You just told me to get it, William said. The man stopped. Beep, beep, beep. Annie moved closer to William, not touching him, but standing in front of him as if to keep him from changing his mind. I recorded them, she said quietly. I have the recording on my phone. The taller man burst into a crooked laugh. You recorded us? What kind of trick is this now? The second man gave a small laugh too, then looked at William as if the whole thing was beneath his attention. Mr. Harrington, come on. A recording? From her? She's been digging through trash cans in the weeds all afternoon. Anyone can point a phone at two men talking and build a story around it. Annie pulled her phone out of her coat pocket. Then let him listen. The taller man sneered. Listen to what? Some shaky, muffled recording from a girl who digs through garbage? Annie's face tightened, but she kept the phone in her hand. William looked at her cracked screen, then at her dust-covered gloves, then at the two men. He still did not reach for the phone. The sound coming from that hole could be anything, he said, and a recording doesn't prove you understood what you heard. Annie stared at him. A flash of hurt crossed her face before she could hide it. You still don't believe me? I believe you're scared, William said. But that isn't the same thing. The taller man seized the chance immediately. Exactly. She's scared because she got caught trespassing on private property. Now she's trying to turn this into a show. The second man nodded. His voice soft again. No one wants to cause trouble for her, Mr. Harrington. Let her go. We finish this, and everyone goes home. Annie shook her head. If you pick up that bag, you won't be going home. Beep, beep, beep. William looked down into the pit again. His jaw shifted once, but he remained there, trapped between trust and pride, between a warning and a lifetime habit of never listening to people like Annie. The second man carefully stepped toward the edge of the pit. Fine, I'll get it myself. No, Annie shouted. She rushed forward to block him, but the taller man grabbed her arm. Before he could tighten his grip, William caught his wrist. Don't touch her, William said. The taller man stepped back, his face full of rage. For one moment, all four of them stood frozen. Annie clutched the phone tightly in her hand. William was still wrestling with the truth, and the two men were trying to hold on to a lie that had begun to echo, one beep at a time, from the bottom of the foundation pit. Beep, beep, beep. The sound kept going. The sound kept rising from the bottom of the pit, thin, steady, cold, like a final warning that had run out of patience. Beep, beep, beep. William released the taller man's wrist, but his eyes stayed fixed on him. Step back. The man rubbed his wrist and let out a bitter laugh. You're making a mistake. No, Annie said, still clutching the phone tightly against her chest. He almost made one. William turned to look at her. It was not trust yet, but for the first time, there was not complete contempt in his eyes. The second man raised one hand again, trying to pull the situation back onto the track he had planned. Mr. Harrington, please be reasonable. That sound could be coming from anything. Old equipment, a tracker, an abandoned phone. This is a deserted construction site. Half the scrap here probably still has batteries in it. Then you go down and pick it up, Annie said. The man looked at her. The smile disappeared from his face. This time William saw it. The man did not answer. He only adjusted the front of his coat, as if his silence meant nothing. But Annie saw it too. He wants to leave, she said. Everybody wants to leave, the taller man growled. When some girl with a sack full of cans starts screaming like she's lost her mind. Annie turned toward him. You weren't laughing when the bag started beeping. The man stepped toward her again, but William shifted slightly, just enough to place himself between Annie and him. Enough, William said. The single word fell against the cold concrete like an order. William took his phone from his coat pocket and tapped the screen. There was no signal. He lifted it a little higher, angling it toward the open side of the structure. Then frowned. The second man noticed the movement. You said no calls. I said no lawyers. No board members. William glanced at him. I never said I was stupid. The beeping continued. Beep. 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 William turned his wrist and pressed the side of his watch, holding it for 2 seconds. The movement was small, almost natural, but Annie saw it. The taller man saw it too. What did you just do? He demanded. William looked at him. Protected my investment. The taller man's face tightened. You think you're smart? I think I'm still alive, William replied. And for now, I'd like to keep it that way. Annie let out a long breath, only then realizing she had been holding it. Her legs trembled, but she forced herself to stand straight. All afternoon, she had been bent over, searching through weeds for cans and scrap metal. She had been called a thief, a liar, a girl who dug through trash. But now, finally, someone was beginning to listen. The taller man suddenly reached toward the silver suitcase. William saw it immediately. Leave it there. That's our payment. For what? William asked. The files you don't have? The man's mouth opened, then closed again. The second man tried to hold on to his composure. The files are in the bag. Then why are you so eager to leave without it? This time, the beeping answered for them. Beep, beep, beep. From beyond the broken fence came the low growl of an engine. The two men heard it. Annie heard it too. William did not turn around. The second man's smooth voice suddenly caught in his throat. Mr. Harrington, if you brought people here, you violated the terms of the agreement. William looked at him with cold eyes. You threw me a bag that's counting down. I'm comfortable with having broken the rules. Annie might have smiled if she had not been so afraid. The taller man suddenly bolted. This time, he did not move toward William. He ran straight for the narrow side path that led behind the old trailer. Annie reacted before she could think. He's running. William turned just as the man broke away. A black SUV shot out from behind the concrete columns and blocked the exit. The brakes screamed. 2 men in dark jackets stepped out. Stop right there, one of them shouted. The taller man froze, his hands slightly raised, then turned back toward William with hatred in his eyes. The second man slowly lifted his hands. This isn't necessary. A new voice came from outside the structure. That's usually what men say after their plan fails. Marcus Reed stepped out of the sunlight, tall and calm, wearing a dark field jacket instead of a suit. His eyes moved from William to Annie, then to the mouth of the pit, where the beeping was still echoing steadily. Sir, Marcus said, are you hurt? No, William replied. Keep everyone away from that pit. Marcus nodded and spoke quickly into his radio. No one goes near the bag. Seal off the area. Call the disposal team in now. The second man's expression changed. Call what in? Marcus looked at him. The kind of people you definitely don't want to meet. Annie lowered the phone slightly. Her hand was starting to cramp from holding it so tightly. William noticed. Don't put it away. I wasn't going to. I need to see the rest. You didn't want to look a minute ago. William was silent for a second. Then he said, I was wrong a minute ago. The words were simple, but Annie felt them more deeply than she expected. She touched the screen again. This time, William watched without interrupting. The video shook slightly, showing the 2 men standing near the old trailer. When the wind died down, their voices became clearer. He takes the bag, walks out, and Charles handles the rest, the taller man said in the video. The second man replied, 5 minutes is all we need. By the time anyone understands what happened, the board will already be sending flowers. William's face showed no emotion, but his color changed. Marcus heard it too. His eyes moved to William, then turned coldly toward the two men. Annie stopped the video before her phone died. There's more, she said, but my phone is almost dead. Marcus reached into his jacket, pulled out a small power bank, and handed it to her. Plug it in. Annie took it, slightly stunned. Thank you. Yes, ma'am, Marcus said. The taller man muttered a curse under his breath. The second man said nothing more. His smooth voice had finally run out of places to hide. William looked down into the pit again. Beep, beep, beep. Then he turned to Annie. What were you doing here? Annie's shoulders tightened. Collecting cans, scrap, anything I could sell. William looked at the sack near her feet. He looked at the plastic bottles and crushed aluminum cans scattered across the concrete. For a moment, the billionaire seemed unable to find words for the distance between his silver suitcase full of money and her torn cloth bag. Then he said more quietly, "And you stayed." Annie nodded. "I almost didn't." William looked at the two men being held near the concrete columns. Then he looked down at the beeping foundation pit. Finally, he looked back at Annie. "I'm glad you did. If this moment touched your heart, please like this video and leave a comment telling us where you are watching from. Your support helps us share more stories about courage, kindness, and doing what is right. And if you believe one brave voice can change everything, please subscribe to the channel." Marcus did not wait for William to explain. He had worked long enough around powerful men to know when questions could wait and when they could get people hurt. He lifted his radio. "Perimeter tight. Nobody leaves. I want eyes on the south fence and the service road. Keep your distance from the pit." The taller man laughed once from where two security officers held him near the columns. "You people have no idea what you're doing." Marcus glanced at him. Then, "It's a good thing you're here to watch." The man's mouth tightened. William stepped closer to Marcus and lowered his voice. "It came from the bag. 3, maybe 4 minutes of beeping now. Could be a tracker," Marcus said. "It isn't," Annie said. Both men turned to her. She wished they would stop doing that all at once. Every time their attention moved toward her, she felt the old instinct to shrink. But she had already learned what shrinking did. It made room for louder people to lie. "I heard them talking before you came," she said. "They said once you picked it up and walked away, there wouldn't be much time." Marcus's face stayed calm. "How much time?" Annie looked toward the pit. 5 minutes. Maybe less. William's eyes closed for half a second. Marcus spoke into the radio again. "Move everyone back another 50 yards. Now, get Atlanta PD and bomb squad here. Tell them we may have an active device in a foundation pit at the Harrington South Site property." The second man in black found his voice again. "You're turning a misunderstanding into a circus." Marcus looked at him. "Sir, I've seen misunderstandings. They don't usually beep from holes in the ground." Annie almost laughed, but the sound in the pit cut it short. "Beep, beep, beep. Faster now." William looked toward the open gate. "How long?" "Police?" Marcus asked. "A few minutes if we're lucky. Bomb squad longer." "We may not have longer." "No, sir." The words landed plainly. No drama, no comfort. Annie respected that. Her grandmother always said plain truth was easier to stand on than soft lies. The taller man tried again. "Let me go down there. I'll shut it off." "No one goes down there," Marcus said. The man spread his hands. "You want it to keep going? I want you where I can see you." Annie watched the taller man's shoes. They kept angling toward the pit, then toward the side path, then back. He did not want to save anyone. He wanted control of the bag. She spoke before she could talk herself out of it. "He wants to get to it because he knows what it is." The taller man snapped his head toward her. "You don't know when to quit, do you?" "No," Annie said. "Not today." William looked at her again, and this time there was no irritation in it, just attention. Marcus asked, "Did they say anything else about the bag? Anything about how it works?" Annie pressed her fingers to her forehead, trying to pull the memory back in the right order. She had been scared when she heard it. Some words had blurred. Others had burned into her. They said Charles would handle it from far away. she said. One of them asked what if the signal didn't reach. The other said the receiver was on the side panel. He said it would catch the signal once Mr. Harrington got clear of the site. Marcus held still. Side panel? Yes. Anything else? They joked about it. One of them said if that side got crushed, the whole thing would be useless. She looked down into the pit. It hit the concrete when I threw it. Maybe that's why it's making that noise. Maybe something started. Marcus did not waste a second. Good. That matters. The second man in black let out a dry laugh. You're taking technical advice from a woman who came here for soda cans? William turned on him. I'm taking life advice from the person who kept me from holding that bag. The man fell quiet. In the distance, sirens began to rise. Annie heard them and felt her legs weaken. Help was coming. Real help. Uniforms. Radios. People with authority. Then another thought came in behind it, darker and familiar. Authority did not always mean safety for someone like her. She had climbed through a fence. She had been on private property. She had taken video. The men in black had already called her a thief. What if the police believed the wrong people first? William seemed to read part of it on her face. You stay beside me. Annie looked at him. That doesn't always help. He absorbed that. It stung him, she could tell, but not because she meant to insult him, because he knew enough of America to understand what she meant. No, he said. I suppose it doesn't always. Today it will. The first patrol cars came through the broken service gate, tires crunching over gravel. Two officers stepped out with hands near their belts, eyes moving from William to Marcus to the two restrained men to Annie. Behind them came an unmarked sedan. A woman in a navy jacket got out, gray threaded through her short hair. She had the kind of face that did not rush to surprise. Marcus walked to meet her. Detective Bennett? Laura Bennett, she said. Who's Harrington? William stepped forward. I am. You hurt? No. Anybody else? No. Her eyes moved to Annie. And you are? Annie opened her mouth, but William answered first. The reason I'm not holding that bag. Bennett looked at Annie again, and something in her tone changed. Name, ma'am? Annie Carter. All right, Miss Carter. I'm going to ask you questions in a minute. For now, stay back from the pit. The word miss steadied Annie more than she expected. The beeping sharpened. Beep, 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 beep. One of the uniformed officers looked toward the sound. That's coming from down there? Yes, Marcus said. No one has approached it. Bennett lifted her radio and called for bomb squad confirmation, then ordered the whole site pushed back. Officers moved quickly, guiding everyone behind a row of concrete barriers near the old loading dock. The two men in black were separated and cuffed. The taller one protested loudly. The second one went quiet, which Annie found worse. William stayed close as Annie moved behind the barrier. Marcus stayed on the other side of William. It formed a small wall around her without anyone saying that was what they were doing. Bennett came over with a notepad. Miss Carter, tell me only what you know. Not what you think. Not what anybody told you after. What did you hear with your own ears? Annie nodded. They said Mr. Harrington would bring money. They said there were no files in the bag. They said Charles would send the signal after he walked away with it. They said 5 minutes. Bennett wrote quickly. Charles who? William answered, voice flat. Charles Harrington. My brother. The detective's pen stopped for a beat, then continued. All right, Annie added. They said the receiver was on the side panel. If that side got crushed, it might not work. Bennett looked up. You're sure? I'm sure they said it. I don't know if it's true. That's a good answer. A bomb squad truck rolled in at the far gate. Men in protective gear began unloading equipment. One of them brought a small tracked robot and a monitor. Bennett walked to them, relayed what Annie had said, and pointed toward the pit. The taller man yelled from near a patrol car. She's lying. She doesn't know what she heard. Bennett did not raise her voice. Then you can explain your version downtown. William turned to Annie. Do you still have the video? She held up her phone. It's charging. Marcus had connected it to the power bank and wrapped the cord so it would not pull loose. Keep it on, Bennett called from several yards away. That phone is evidence now. Annie looked down at the cracked screen. Evidence. That word made the phone feel heavier. The robot crawled toward the pit, its treads grinding over dust and small stones. Everyone watched the monitor as it descended the grated edge where the foundation wall had broken. The black bag came into view, lying on its side. Beep beep, beep beep. The bomb technician leaned over the monitor. There's something active inside. External signal light on the side. Bennett looked back at Annie. William did too. Annie did not feel proud. She felt cold. Being right did not make the danger smaller. The robot's arm extended toward the side panel. For one long moment, the whole site held its breath. Then the beeping changed into a flat, continuous tone. The flat tone cut through the site and stayed there. No one moved. The bomb technician leaned closer to the monitor. One hand lifted for silence, though nobody was speaking. The robot's arm held steady against the side of the black bag. On the screen, the small signal light that had been blinking near the seam now glowed without rhythm. Annie gripped the power bank and phone so tightly the cord pressed into her palm. William's voice was low. "Is that good or bad?" The technician did not answer right away. That was the worst part. He adjusted a control, and the robot's claw pressed down harder against the side panel Annie had described. The flat tone cracked, flickered, then stopped. The silence that followed felt too large. After a moment, the technician exhaled. "Receivers disabled. Nobody approach it yet. The device may still be live, but remote activation is cut off." Detective Bennett turned toward Annie. "You remembered right." Annie nodded, but her mouth had gone dry. She did not feel brave. She felt like someone who had been standing too close to a train and only now realized it had missed her. The taller man in black started yelling from beside the patrol car. "That doesn't prove anything. You don't know what was in that bag before she threw it down there." Bennett looked at one of the officers. "Put him in the car." The man kept talking as they guided him backward. "She set this up. You're listening to a scrap girl over us?" William turned sharply. "Say one more word about her." The officer paused, not because he needed help, but because William's voice had changed the air. The man swallowed whatever he had planned to say next and ducked into the back seat. The second man had stayed quiet since the robot reached the bag. He stood near another patrol car, wrists cuffed in front, face pale under the late-day dust. His eyes kept moving toward the pit, then toward the road, then toward William. He looked less like a partner now and more like a man calculating how much truth he could sell before someone else sold more. Bennett saw it too. She walked over to him. "You want to tell me who built the device?" He gave a tired smile. "I want my attorney." "That's your right." "It is. And while you're waiting, you might want to think about whether your friend over there plans to protect you or blame you." His smile weakened. Bennett left him with that and returned to William and Annie. "Miss Carter, I need that video secured. We'll make a copy here, then the phone comes with us as evidence." Annie looked down at the phone. It was old, slow, cracked across the corner. It had her grandmother's missed calls, grocery lists, photos of medicine labels, and one short video that had turned a Billionaire's afternoon upside down. "Will I get it back?" she asked. "When we can release it, yes. I need it. My grandma calls me on it." William spoke before Bennett could answer. "She'll have a working phone before she leaves tonight." Annie looked at him. "I didn't ask you for that." "I know. Then don't make it sound like payment." William accepted the correction. "All right, not payment. Practical help." Annie studied him for a second. "Practical help still has strings sometimes." "Not from me," she almost said. "How would I know?" But this was not the time. The pit was still blocked off. The police were still moving. The two men were still close enough to see her. Charles Harrington was still somewhere beyond the site, breathing free. Bennett cleared her throat, not unkindly. "We can sort that out later. Right now I need your statement while your memory is fresh." Marcus stepped forward. "Detective, before that, Mr. Harrington needs to be moved." William shook his head. "I'm not leaving." "Sir, I said I'm not leaving until that device is secured and she gives her statement." Marcus did not argue in front of others, but his jaw told Annie he wanted to. Bennett looked at William. "You can stay behind the barrier. You won't interfere." "I won't. And if I tell you to move, you move." William nodded once. "Understood." The detective guided Annie a few yards away, near the side of a patrol car, where the noise was lower. She did not crowd her, did not touch her arm, did not talk down to her. That helped. "Start from when you arrived," Bennett said. Annie took a breath. "I came through the gap in the fence around 3:30, maybe a little after. I come here sometimes for cans, wire, scrap metal. I know I wasn't supposed to be here." Bennett wrote that down. Keep going. I was near the old trailer when the SUV came in. Those two got out. I hid because I thought maybe they were security or owners. Then I heard them say Mr. Harrington's name. What made you record? They talked about the bag. They said there were no files. They said Charles would send the signal. I thought if I just called somebody, no one would believe me. Or they wouldn't get here in time. Did they see you? One of them did. The taller one. I stepped on a branch. He came over, and I pretended I was just picking cans. What did he say? Annie glanced toward the patrol car. He asked if I heard anything. I said no. He told me to keep walking. But you stayed. Yes. Why? Annie looked past Bennett toward William. He stood near Marcus, watching the bomb squad but not speaking. For a man surrounded by his own people, he looked strangely alone. My grandma says when the truth finds you, you don't get to pretend you weren't home. Bennett's pen paused. Your grandmother sounds like someone worth listening to. She is. The detective nodded. And when Mr. Harrington arrived, they did exactly what they said. He threw the money case. They threw the bag. He was about to take it, and I ran. And you threw it into the pit. Yes. Knowing what you believed was inside, Annie's throat tightened. I didn't think. I just knew he shouldn't hold it. Bennett let that sit without turning it into praise. Annie appreciated that. Praise sometimes made fear feel smaller than it had been. And nothing about this had been small. At the pit, the bomb squad brought in a larger shield and a second robot. The technician spoke with Marcus, then with Bennett over the radio. Bennett listened, then looked toward William. They're going to open the bag remotely, she said. William walked closer but stayed behind the line. Will it be safe? Safer than leaving it closed. The robot's claw worked at the zipper. On the monitor, the black fabric pulled open inch by inch. Nobody breathed normally. Even the officers near the patrol cars stopped shifting. Inside the bag was not paper. No folders, no files, no flash drives wrapped in envelopes, no contracts, nothing that looked like evidence of corporate theft. There was a compact metal box with taped wiring, a battery pack, and a damaged receiver crushed along one side. An officer near the monitor muttered, "Good Lord." William did not speak. Annie watched his face as the last piece of doubt left him. It did not leave gently. It seemed to take something with it. Bennett looked at him. Mr. Harrington, I'm sorry. He kept his eyes on the screen. Don't be. She told me. The second man in black sank slightly against the patrol car, as if his legs had lost interest in holding him up. The taller one kicked the inside of the other car door and shouted something no one bothered to answer. William turned away from the monitor and faced Annie. This time he did not look at her as if she were an interruption, or trouble, or a question he had not asked. He looked at her like a person whose words had been measured and found true. I owe you an apology, he said. Annie did not answer right away. The old habit in her wanted to say it was fine. It was always easier to make powerful people comfortable. Her grandmother had taught her manners, but she had also taught her the difference between peace and surrender. So Annie said, "Yes, sir, you do." William nodded, accepting it. Before he could say more, Marcus's radio crackled. He listened, then stepped toward William. "Sir, we have a problem." William turned. "What now?" Marcus glanced at Annie, then back at him. The call logs from one of their phones show repeated contact with a blocked number. Last call was less than 10 minutes ago. Bennett heard and moved closer. "Can your team trace it?" "Already trying." An officer by the patrol car called out, "Detective, the quiet one wants to talk." Everyone turned toward the second man. He had lost the polished look completely. Sweat had gathered along his hairline. He looked at William, then Bennett, then at the pit where the open bag sat under the robot's light. "I'll give you Charles," he said, "but I want protection." William's hands curled at his sides. Bennett stepped toward the man. "Charles Harrington?" The man nodded. "And why would you need protection from him?" The man gave a humorless laugh. "Because if he finds out this failed, we're not the only ones he'll try to erase." His eyes moved to Annie. She understood before anyone explained. The day was not over. Neither was the danger. The second man looked smaller once he asked for protection. Not kinder, not innocent, just smaller. Detective Bennett walked toward him slowly, leaving enough space for the officers beside him to keep control. "Start with your name." He swallowed. "Evan Cole." "The man in the other car?" Ray Voss. And Charles Harrington hired you? Evan glanced toward William, then away. Not directly at first. There were layers. A consulting company, a private security contact, cash deposits. But yes, it came from Charles. William's face did not change, and that made Annie uneasy. Anger she understood. Shouting she understood. This stillness looked like something buried too deep to reach. Bennett pulled a small recorder from her pocket. You understand you're speaking voluntarily? I understand I want to live. That's not the same answer. Evan closed his eyes. Yes, voluntarily. Ray Voss began kicking the inside of the patrol car again. Shut your mouth, Evan. Bennett did not look back. Move that car farther down the lane. 2 officers got in and drove Ray's patrol car away, his muffled shouting fading behind the concrete columns. Evan watched it go. He'll blame me anyway. For what? Bennett asked. For not grabbing the girl when he had the chance. Annie's stomach tightened. William stepped forward. Say that again. Evan looked at him and seemed to understand there was no safe answer. Charles didn't want witnesses. If anyone saw the exchange, we were supposed to scare them off. If they had proof, we were supposed to take it. Take it, Annie repeated. You mean my phone? Evan did not answer. Bennett did it for him, and if she wouldn't give it up, Evan's eyes dropped to the ground. That silence was enough. William turned away, one hand moving to his mouth for a second before falling back to his side. Annie had seen rich men angry on television, in interviews and hearings, with polished words and expensive outrage. This was not that. This was a man realizing that his life had not been the only one placed on the table. Marcus came closer to Annie. Miss Carter, is there anyone at home waiting for you? My grandmother. What's her name? Rose Carter. Does she know where you are? Annie shook her head. She knows I came out to collect scrap. Not here exactly. Can we call her? Annie looked down at her phone connected to the power bank. She'll be worried. Bennett heard and nodded to one of the officers. Let Miss Carter make a call, but keep the phone connected after. We still need it. Annie unlocked the screen with shaking fingers. There were 3 missed calls from Rose. Seeing them hurt worse than she expected, she stepped a few feet away, though Marcus stayed near enough to protect her and far enough not to listen closely. Rose picked up on the first ring. Annie? I'm okay, Grandma. You don't sound okay. I know. I'm sorry. I'm with the police. A silence came through the line. Then Rose's voice changed. It became low and careful. What happened? I saw something at the Harrington site. I recorded it. A man was in danger. Are you hurt? No, Ma. Did anybody put hands on you? Annie glanced at William, at Evan, at the pit, at the black bag under the robot's light. Almost. But no. Rose breathed out slowly. Where are you now? Still at the site. They need my statement. Mr. Harrington is here. The billionaire? Yes. Another pause. Is he treating you right? Annie almost smiled despite everything. He's learning. Rose made a soft sound that might have been approval and might have been warning. Don't let anybody rush your words. Tell the truth plain. If you don't understand a question, say so. If they ask you the same thing twice, answer it the same way because the truth doesn't need decoration. I know. And Annie? Yes, ma'am? You did right by calling me. Now do right by yourself. Keep your head up. Annie closed her eyes. I will. When she ended the call, William was a few steps away. He had not listened, but his face said he understood enough. Your grandmother is worried, he said. She's always worried. She just doesn't always admit it. Can someone bring her here? Annie shook her head quickly. No, she's not well, and she doesn't need this place in her head. I'll go home when they're done. William nodded, then looked toward Marcus. Make sure she gets there safely. Annie turned. I can take the bus. No, Marcus said before William could answer. Not tonight. Annie looked at him. I've taken buses at night before. I'm sure you have, Marcus said, but the people behind this know your name now. That stopped her. Bennett returned with a uniformed officer carrying a small evidence kit. Miss Carter, we're going to copy the video on site. You'll watch us do it. Then we'll seal the phone. You can list anything personal on it that you need preserved. My pictures? They'll be preserved. My grandma's numbers? We'll write them down for you. William said, I'll have a replacement brought here. Annie looked at him again. You don't have to fix every problem with money. No, he said, but I can fix the one where you need a phone to call your grandmother. She had no easy answer to that. Near the patrol car, Evan started talking again. Bennett moved back to him, recorder in hand. William followed, and Annie stayed where she was, but she could still hear enough. Charles said the board was getting restless, Evan said. He said William was making decisions that cost people money. Too many stalled projects. Too much land tied up. He said if William died in an accident, there would be sympathy instead of suspicion. William's voice was quiet. And the cash? Proof of motive. If anyone found it later, it would look like you were paying off blackmailers. Bennett asked, and the bag? Evan hesitated. The bag was supposed to leave with him. It wasn't supposed to end up in the pit. Annie felt the eyes turn toward her again. Evan added, Charles said William never checks what he carries. He said rich men trust things that look expensive. William flinched at that, not visibly to everyone, but Annie saw it. The insult had come from someone who knew him. Bennett said, Where is Charles now? I don't know. Try harder. He has a place in Midtown, but if he knows this failed, he won't stay there. Marcus spoke into his radio. I want a team on Charles Harrington's residence and office. Quiet approach. No contact until APD confirms. Bennett gave him a look. Your team doesn't make arrests. Marcus nodded. No, detective. We watch doors. Good. Keep it that way. The bomb technician called out from near the monitor. Device is stable for transport. We'll remove it sealed. The word stable loosened something across the site. Officers moved with less tension. One of them closed the silver case of cash and tagged it as evidence. Another photographed the path between the exchange point and the pit. The place began turning from a death trap into a crime scene. Annie watched them mark the ground with small yellow numbers. One near the money case. One where the bag had first landed. One beside the crushed cans from her sack. A can she had planned to sell for pennies had become evidence too. William walked over and stood beside her. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then he said, I want to apologize properly. Not here, Annie said. He looked at her. Here you're still scared, she continued. I'm still scared. Everybody's watching. People say things different when people are watching. William considered that. That's fair. Annie bent down and began picking up the cans that had spilled from her sack. William seemed unsure what to do, then slowly bent and picked up one near his shoe. Annie stopped. You don't have to do that. I know. He dropped the can into her sack. It was a small thing, almost nothing. But Evan saw it from the patrol car. So did Marcus. So did Detective Bennett. William Harrington, who had arrived with a case full of cash, was now picking up a crushed soda can because the woman who saved his life had dropped it. Annie tied the sack closed with a frayed cord. What happens now? Bennett answered from behind them. Now, we take statements. We secure evidence. We find Charles Harrington before he decides to run. William looked toward the road beyond the fence. The sun had dropped lower, and the city traffic beyond the site had become a slow line of headlights. And if he already has? He asked. Bennett's face hardened. Then we make sure he doesn't get far. Annie held the sack against her side and thought of Rose waiting by the phone, pretending not to be afraid. The day had started with cans and bottles. Now it had a billionaire, oddman in custody, and a brother somewhere in the city with enough money to disappear. And Annie knew, with a cold certainty, that Charles Harrington had not yet said his last word. Detective Bennett moved the interview to the shelter of the old site office, not because it was comfortable, but because it had 3 walls, a roof that still held, and enough distance from the flashing lights to let Annie breathe. The office smelled like damp plywood and old dust. A broken desk sat against one wall. Someone had left a cracked coffee mug on the windowsill years ago. Its handle missing, the inside stained brown. Through the dirty window, Annie could see officers moving across the site with flashlights and evidence markers. The black bag was gone now, sealed inside a bomb squad container, but she could still hear the beeping in her head. Bennett set a small recorder on the desk. This is just to keep the statement accurate. You're not in trouble, Miss Carter. Annie sat on a folding chair with her sack by her feet. People say that before they decide different. Bennett did not smile. Sometimes they do. I'm not them. William stood near the doorway. Marcus waited outside, close enough to see both the yard and the road. Bennett looked at William. Mr. Harrington, I need her statement without you shaping it. I won't say a word. That's not what I asked. William hesitated, then stepped outside with Marcus. Annie noticed he did not argue. For a man like him, that seemed to cost something. Bennett clicked the recorder on. State your full name. Annie Carter. Where do you live? Annie gave the street. Not the apartment number at first. Bennett waited, and Annie added it. She hated how small it sounded when spoken aloud, as if poverty became more visible once it had an address. Bennett asked her to tell the story again, from the moment she entered the site. Annie did. She described the gap in the fence, the trailer, the two men, the bag on the metal table, the words they used, the name Charles, the 5 minutes, the side panel. She spoke slowly because Rose had told her truth should not run unless danger was chasing it. When she reached the part where she ran at William, her voice caught. I didn't mean to hit him that hard, she said. I just saw his hand on the bag. Bennett nodded. He's not filing a complaint for that. That's good, Annie said, then realized the answer sounded strange. For the first time, Bennett's mouth moved almost into a smile. Yes, that's good. Outside, a door slammed. Ray Voss shouted something as officers moved him into another vehicle. Annie stiffened. Bennett turned her head, listened, then looked back. He can't get to you. He saw my face. Yes. He heard my name. Yes. Annie looked down at her hands. Then don't tell me he can't get to me. Tell me what you're going to do so he doesn't. Bennett sat back. The recorder kept running. Fair. We'll keep both men in custody. We'll notify the district attorney tonight. Your statement and video put them in the middle of an attempted homicide and conspiracy. They won't bond out before we know where Charles is. Not if I can help it. Marcus Reed's team will get you home, and a patrol unit will sit near your house, quietly. My grandmother will notice a police car. Then we'll do an unmarked unit. She'll notice that too. She sounds sharp. She is. Then tell her enough that she knows to be careful, but not enough that she carries the whole fear by herself. Annie looked at Bennett then. You talk like you know old women. I was raised by one. That was the first thing Bennett said that felt personal. Annie let herself breathe a little. The statement took another 20 minutes. Bennett had Annie mark the approximate place where she hid on a printed site map. She asked whether Annie saw any license plates. Annie remembered the SUV was black, with a dent near the rear door, and a Georgia plate that started with C or G. She was angry she could not remember more. Bennett said, You remembered enough to keep a man alive. I remembered enough because they didn't think I mattered. That happens. You say that like you've seen it. I have. Bennett switched off the recorder. We're done for now. We'll need a formal statement later, maybe tomorrow. You'll also be asked about the trespass. Annie's stomach dropped. Bennett held up a hand. Listen first. I'm not pretending you had legal permission to be here, but I'm also not blind. You came for scrap. You found a crime. You reported it in the only way you could. I'll make sure that context is in every report with your name on it. Annie nodded. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Cases get ugly before they get clean. Outside, William turned as Annie stepped from the office. He had been talking to Marcus, but he stopped mid-sentence. Are you finished? He asked. For now, Bennett said. She needs to go home. William nodded. Marcus will take her. Annie lifted her chin. Marcus can take me to the bus stop. No, William said. Bennett looked at him. William corrected himself. I'm sorry, that came out wrong. Miss Carter, after what happened here, I would feel better if Marcus drove you home. I'm not responsible for making you feel better. The words left Annie before she could soften them. Marcus looked down for a second, as if hiding a reaction. Bennett watched William. William accepted it. You're right. Then I'll say it differently. People connected to my brother may know you stopped this. I can offer a safer ride home. You can say no. That was better. Annie still did not like needing help, but she liked being asked. All right, she said, but I sit by the door. Marcus nodded. Front passenger seat. Door unlocked. Your choice. William looked at her sack. May I carry that? Annie tightened her grip. I've got it. He let it go. Before they left, Bennett gave Annie a card. My cell is written on the back. If anyone calls you, follows you, comes near your place, or tries to talk you out of your statement, you call me. Not tomorrow, Not after you think about it. Right then, Annie put the card in her jacket pocket beside the phone receipt Bennett had given her. Her actual phone was now sealed in an evidence bag, and the replacement William had ordered had not arrived yet. For the moment, she felt oddly cut off from herself. William noticed. There's a phone waiting in the car. Basic setup. Your number can be transferred later. Annie did not answer, but she followed Marcus toward the SUV. As they crossed the site, Evan Cole called from the back of a patrol car. His voice came through the cracked window. Miss Carter. Annie stopped despite herself. Evan leaned forward as far as the cuffs allowed. You should stay somewhere else tonight. Marcus stepped closer to the car. Why? Evan's eyes moved to William. Charles doesn't forgive embarrassment. And tonight, you embarrassed him in front of everybody he paid. William's face hardened. Where is he? I told the detective what I know. Tell me. Evan shook his head. No. You'll go after him angry. Angry men make noise. Charles listens for noise. Bennett came up behind them. That's enough. But Evan kept his eyes on Annie. If a car you don't know parks near your house, don't go inside. Marcus opened the SUV door. We're leaving. Annie climbed in, her sack at her feet. Marcus started the engine. William stood outside for a moment, speaking low with Bennett. Then he leaned slightly toward Annie's open window. I'm going to make sure your grandmother is protected too, he said. Annie looked ahead through the windshield. Make sure you ask her before you start arranging her life. William paused, then nodded. Marcus pulled away from the site. Through the side mirror, Annie watched the abandoned construction yard shrink behind them. Police lights, broken concrete, the pit, the place where a black bag had turned an ordinary scrap run into something that would not leave her life easily. For several minutes, neither she nor Marcus spoke. Then Marcus said, You hungry? Annie looked at him. He kept his eyes on the road. There's a Waffle House 6 minutes from here. Figured you might not have eaten. Despite the fear pressing under her ribs, Annie almost laughed. Is that your security plan? No, ma'am. That's my southern plan. She looked out at the Atlanta evening, at brake lights and gas stations and people heading home with no idea what had happened behind the fence. My grandma likes hash browns scattered and covered, Annie said. Marcus changed lanes. Then we'll get her some too. Marcus pulled into the Waffle House lot with the same care he had used leaving the construction site. He parked where he could see the road, the entrance, and the reflection of the back door in the glass. Annie noticed. Men like Marcus did not simply stop somewhere. They measured it first. Inside, the place smelled like coffee, butter, and hot grits. A waitress with silver hair and red glasses called Marcus by name before he reached the counter. Evening, Marcus. You want the usual? Not tonight, Miss Carroll. 2 orders to go. 1 scattered and covered. 1 whatever Miss Carter wants. Annie stood beside him with her sack of cans still at her feet. She had not wanted to bring it in, but Marcus said leaving anything visible in the car was a bad habit. Now the sack looked strange under the yellow lights, beside men in work boots, and a couple of older women eating waffles after church meeting. Carol looked at Annie, then at the sack, then back at Annie's face. She did not ask a rude question. She only said, Honey, you look like you've had a day. Annie gave a tired half-smile. Yes, ma'am. Then sit down before your knees decide for you. Marcus paid before Annie could object. She ordered hash browns and toast, though her stomach was too tight for food. While they waited, Marcus stood near the front window and checked his phone. Annie sat in a booth with cracked vinyl seats. The new temporary phone William had given her placed on the table like something borrowed from a life that was not hers. It rang before the food came. Unknown number. Annie looked at Marcus. He crossed the few steps back to the booth. Don't answer. It could be Detective Bennett. She gave you her number. It wouldn't show unknown. The phone stopped. A second later, it rang again. Unknown number. Marcus picked it up, declined the call, then handed it back. If it rings again, I take it outside and document the number. Annie stared at the screen. They got this number fast. It may not be them, but we don't treat maybes like comfort. The phone buzzed with a text. No name. No number she recognized. You should have kept picking cans. Annie's mouth went dry. Marcus read it over her shoulder. His face did not change, but his hand moved to his own phone. We're leaving. Carol came over with the bag of food. Something wrong? Marcus kept his voice calm. Need to get Miss Carter home. Carol looked at Annie again, and this time there was no diner warmth in her eyes, only the sharp concern of a woman who had lived long enough to know fear when it sat in a booth. "You want me to call somebody?" "Already doing it," Marcus said. He took the food, guided Annie out the door, and checked the lot before letting her step outside. The night air had cooled. Cars moved along the road in both directions. At the far end of the lot, a gray sedan sat with its lights off. Marcus saw at the same moment Annie did. "Get in," he said. Annie did not argue. She slid into the front seat, locked the door, and set the sack at her feet. Marcus got in, placed the food in the back, and drove out without looking rushed. That scared Annie more than if he had sped away. The gray sedan pulled out behind them. Annie looked into the side mirror. "Is that them?" "Could be nobody. But you don't think so?" "No." He pressed a button on the steering wheel. "Read to Bennett." Detective Bennett answered through the car speakers after one ring. "Go. Possible tail. Gray sedan. We left Waffle House on Moreland. Unknown text to Miss Carter's temporary phone. You should have kept picking cans. I'm heading to secondary route." Annie heard Bennett's voice sharpen. "Do not go straight to her residence." "Wasn't planning to." "Plate?" Marcus checked the mirror. "Too far back. Georgia tag. First character may be P. I'll get units in the area. Keep the line open." Annie's hands pressed into her knees. "My grandma's home alone." Bennett heard her. "Miss Carter, I've got an unmarked unit 2 blocks from your street. They're moving closer now. Does she know?" "Not yet. She needs to know before strangers sit outside her house." "You're right. We'll do it carefully." Marcus turned off the main road, then again into a neighborhood of older brick houses and dark lawns. The gray sedan followed. Annie's throat tightened. "Still there?" "Yes." "Can't you lose them?" "I can, but I'd rather let police see them." That answer made sense and still made her want to scream. The sedan sped up when Marcus slowed near a 4-way stop. For a moment, it drew close enough that headlights filled Annie's mirror. Then a patrol car rolled from a side street without sirens, blocking the sedan's path. Another came from behind. The sedan braked hard. Marcus kept driving. Annie twisted in her seat. "Shouldn't we stop?" "No. But my job is you. Their job is them." In the mirror, officers were already out of their cars. The gray sedan's doors opened slowly. 2 figures stepped out with hands raised. Detective Bennett's voice came through the speakers. "Marcus, keep moving. We've got them. One of the occupants has an outstanding warrant. We'll know more soon." Annie closed her eyes. The fear did not leave. It only changed places. Marcus drove another 10 minutes before turning toward Annie's neighborhood. The houses grew smaller, closer together. Porch lights glowed behind thin curtains. A dog barked somewhere down the block. Annie saw her grandmother's house before they reached it. Narrow porch, peeling rail, kitchen light on. There was an unmarked car parked across the street. Annie said, "She knows something's wrong. She always leaves the porch light off to save money unless she's worried." Marcus parked at the curb instead of the driveway. "Wait here." "No." He looked at her. "I'm not letting strangers walk up to her door before me." Marcus considered arguing, then nodded. "Stay behind my left shoulder." Annie carried the Waffle House bag and left the sack in the car. Her legs felt heavy as she crossed the small yard. Before she reached the steps, the door opened. Rose Carter stood in the doorway in her house robe. One hand braced against the frame. She was small, but there was nothing weak in the way she held herself. "Annie." "I'm okay," Annie said quickly. "I'm okay, Grandma." Rose looked past her at Marcus, at the SUV, at the unmarked car across the street. "That is too many people for okay." Marcus stepped forward, respectful but not soft. "Mrs. Carter, my name is Marcus Reed. I work security for Mr. Harrington. May we come in and explain?" Rose studied him. "You armed?" "Yes, ma'am." "You planning on taking that weapon out in my living room?" "No, Mom." "Then wipe your feet." Marcus did. Inside, the house was warm and cramped. A small Bible lay open on the coffee table. The television was muted on a local news channel. A pill organizer sat beside a glass of water. Annie set the food on the kitchen table. "I brought your hash browns." Rose did not look at the bag. "Sit down." "Grandma." "Sit down first. Explain second." Annie sat. Marcus remained standing near the door until Rose pointed at a chair. "You too." You're making the room nervous." He sat. Annie told her enough. Not every detail. Not the way the bag sounded. Not the way the men looked at her when they realized she had recorded them. But enough. 2 men. Mr. Harrington, the bag, the police, the video, Charles. Rose listened without interrupting. Her hands stayed folded on the table. The skin thin over the bones. The knuckles swollen from years of work. When Annie finished, Rose looked at Marcus. "And the men who did this know where my grandbaby lives?" Marcus answered honestly. "They may. A threatening message came through. Police stopped a car that followed us. We're taking it seriously." Rose nodded once, slow. "Good. Don't insult me with comfort." "No, Mom." Annie reached for her grandmother's hand. "I'm sorry." Rose looked at her sharply. "For what?" "For bringing this here. You didn't bring evil here. You exposed it somewhere else. And it followed because evil hates being seen." Annie's eyes burned. Rose squeezed her hand. "Did you tell the truth?" "Yes, ma'am." "Did you help somebody who needed help?" "Yes." "Then hold your head up." A knock came at the door. Marcus stood at once, checked through the curtain, then opened it halfway. William Harrington stood on the porch, without his suit jacket now, his tie loosened, his face older than it had looked at the construction site. Detective Bennett stood behind him. Rose looked past Marcus. "Is that the billionaire?" Annie sighed. "Yes, ma'am." Rose sat back in her chair. "Well, let him in. If a man owes my granddaughter an apology, he can say it in my kitchen." William stepped into Rose Carter's kitchen like a man entering a courtroom where money had no authority. He had faced zoning boards, federal auditors, union negotiators, and angry shareholders, but none of them had ever looked at him the way Rose did from the far side of the small kitchen table. She did not rise. She did not offer her hand. She only watched him over the rim of her glasses, one hand resting on Annie's. Detective Bennett stayed near the doorway. Marcus moved aside but remained close enough to the front window to watch the street. William glanced around the room before he spoke, not in judgment. Annie watched carefully for that. He looked at the old stove, the worn floor, the medicine bottles lined near the sink, the Waffle House bag cooling on the table, and something in his face shifted. Maybe it was the difference between knowing someone was poor and standing in the place where that poverty counted pills by the day. "Mrs. Carter," he said, "thank you for letting me come in." Rose gave him a small nod. "I didn't let you in for your sake." "No, ma'am. I understand." "Do you?" William took the question without flinching. "I'm starting to." Rose leaned back. Starting is not the same as knowing. Annie looked down at the table because she did not want William to see the small pull at the corner of her mouth. Rose had always been polite, but she did not bend herself around rich men. Not anymore. William turned to Annie. "I owe you an apology." Annie had imagined this moment on the ride home, though she had not meant to. She thought he might sound formal, like a man reading from a lawyer's note. He did not. His voice was low and tired. "At the site, you told me the truth," he said. "I doubted you. I let those men speak about you in ways I should have stopped sooner. And if you had not acted before I believed you, I would be dead." The room went quiet. Rose's hand tightened around Annie's. Annie swallowed. "You were angry. I was wrong before I was angry." That answer landed differently. Detective Bennett watched from the doorway without interrupting. Marcus kept his eyes on the curtain, but Annie could tell he was listening too. William continued. "I can't undo that, but I can say plainly that you saved my life, Miss Carter. And I am sorry the first thing you had to do afterward was prove you were worth believing." Annie stared at the table. The Waffle House bag had a grease stain blooming through the paper. For some reason, that was what she focused on. Not William's suit. Not Bennett's badge. Not the police car outside. Just that small stain spreading slowly. "People like me usually have to prove it twice," Annie said. William nodded. "I'm learning that too." Rose spoke then. "Don't learn it like a headline, Mr. Harrington. Headlines fade by morning." William looked at her. "I won't. You say that tonight because you're scared and grateful. Both are honest feelings, but they don't always last." "No, ma'am, they don't." Rose studied him. "Then what will?" William did not answer quickly, and Annie respected that more than if he had rushed. "Action," he said at last. "Protection first. Legal support. Whatever Annie needs for the case. Whatever you both need to be safe from my brother and anyone connected to him." Rose's eyes sharpened. And after your brother is caught? William looked at Annie. Then we discuss what is right. Not what looks generous. What is right. Annie almost did not recognize the silence that followed. It was not suspicion exactly. It was space. The kind people leave when someone says something that might become true if handled carefully. Detective Bennett stepped forward. On that note, we need to talk about tonight. Mrs. Carter, I don't want to frighten you, but I also won't leave things vague. 2 men connected to an attempted killing have been arrested. One has already stated that Charles Harrington may retaliate if he believes Miss Carter can hurt him legally. A vehicle followed her from a restaurant. We stopped it. We're still confirming who sent them. Rose looked at Annie. You didn't tell me about the car. I was going to. When? Christmas? Grandma. Rose turned back to Bennett. What do you recommend? Not staying here tonight. Anya sat up. No. Bennett did not argue. I know you don't like it. This is our home. I understand. No, you don't. People always say leave like it's easy. You leave. You pack medicine, papers, clothes, chargers, the good shoes if there's church Sunday. You leave and wonder if someone will break in while you're gone. You leave and come back to a landlord asking questions. Rose looked at Annie with a mix of pride and worry. William listened, and Annie saw him taking in the details. Not the idea of leaving, the cost of leaving. You're right, Bennett said. It isn't easy, but for one night, it may be smart. Marcus spoke from the window. I can arrange a secure hotel under another name. Ground access controlled. 2 exits. My team covers the hall. Rose frowned. A hotel? Annie shook her head. Grandma can't sleep in hotel beds. Her back. I can sleep wherever my granddaughter is alive, Rose said. Annie stopped. Rose looked at William. This hotel, is it one of yours? No, ma'am. Good. I don't want to sleep inside your guilt. William accepted that too. Marcus can arrange it through security, not company hospitality. Bennett said, I'll have an officer escort you. Before we leave, pack only what you need for 24 hours. Medication, identification, phone chargers, clothing. Rose pushed back her chair. Annie stood quickly to help, but Rose waved her off. I know where my own medicine is. Grandma, let me. You can get the blue bag from the closet. Annie went to the small bedroom, pulled down the travel bag they used only for hospital visits, and for a moment she had to sit on the edge of the bed. The room smelled like Rose's lotion and clean laundry. On the dresser sat a framed photo of Annie at 12, smiling with 2 missing teeth, Rose's hands on her shoulders. She heard William's voice from the kitchen, quieter now. Mrs. Carter, may I ask what medication needs refrigeration? Rose answered, insulin, bottom shelf. I'll have a cooler brought. I have a cooler. I'm sure you do. Then don't talk like I was waiting on you to invent one. A pause. Then William said, yes, ma'am. Annie pressed a hand over her mouth to keep from laughing and crying at the same time. When she returned, William was standing by the sink holding Rose's small red cooler while Rose inspected whether he had packed the insulin correctly. Bennett was writing down emergency contacts. Marcus was at the door speaking into his phone. The temporary phone on the table buzzed again. Everyone stopped. Annie looked at the screen. Unknown number. Bennett picked it up this time and put it on speaker without speaking. For 2 seconds, there was only road noise. Then a man's voice said, calm and close, Annie Carter should have minded her business. Rose reached for Annie's hand. William's face went hard. Detective Bennett said, Charles Harrington, this is Detective Laura Bennett, with Atlanta Police. Keep talking. The line went dead. No one moved. Then William said, that was my brother. Bennett was already dialing. Trace the call, now. Rose stood slowly, one hand on the table. Her voice did not shake. Well, she said, I suppose we'll be packing for more than one night. Detective Bennett did not let the silence settle. Everybody moves now, she said. Mrs. Carter, medication first. Annie, pack what you need for tonight. Marcus, I want your driver at the front and one of your people watching the alley. Mr. Harrington, step outside with me. William did not argue. He followed Bennett onto the porch, but Annie could still hear parts of their voices through the thin front door while she moved through the house with the blue travel bag. Was it Charles? Bennett asked. Yes. You're certain? I grew up hearing that voice through bedroom walls, country clubs, hospital rooms, board meetings. I'm certain. Then he knows her name, her phone, and this address. William's answer came lower. Because of me. Because of what he chose to do, Bennett said. Don't waste guilt. Use it. Annie paused in the hallway with a folded sweater in her hands. That sentence stayed with her. Don't waste guilt. Use it. Rose would have liked that. In the bedroom, Annie packed fast. 2 shirts, jeans, socks, Rose's extra cardigan, the small pouch with insurance cards, a phone charger, and the framed photo from the dresser. She hesitated over the photo, then wrapped it in a t-shirt. If someone came into the house tonight, she did not want them touching every piece of her life. Rose stood in the bathroom doorway, lining prescription bottles on the sink. Bring my Sunday shoes. Annie looked up. Grandma, we're not going to church. Not tonight. But if a person has to leave home under threat, she should still have shoes that remind her she belongs somewhere better. Annie put them in the bag. Marcus entered only after knocking on the open doorframe. Mrs. Carter, I've got a vehicle ready. We'll take side streets. Detective Bennett will have a unit ahead, and one behind. Rose placed the last bottle into a plastic bag. You have family, Mr. Reed? Yes, ma'am. Wife and 2 daughters. Then you understand what I'm about to say. You get my granddaughter where you said you're taking her. Marcus met her eyes. Yes, ma'am. And don't drive like those fools in movies. I have blood pressure. Despite everything, Annie let out a small laugh. Marcus nodded. Smooth and boring. That's the plan. Outside, the neighborhood had changed. Porch lights had come on up and down the block, not all at once, but enough to show that people were watching through blinds and screen doors. In a working neighborhood, trouble did not stay private. It moved along telephone wires, across lawns, through church circles, and into tomorrow's grocery store conversations. Mrs. Alvarez from next door stood on her porch in a robe with a baseball bat in one hand. Rose, you all right? Rose lifted her chin. We're handling it. Mrs. Alvarez pointed the bat toward Marcus. You better be who you say you are. Marcus said, Yes, ma'am. That wasn't an answer. Detective Bennett stepped forward and showed her badge. Atlanta Police. They're under protection tonight. Mrs. Alvarez lowered the bat a little, but not all the way. Somebody messing with Annie? Rose answered before Bennett could. Somebody tried. Mrs. Alvarez looked at Annie. Her face softened. You call me when you get where you're going. I will, Annie said. William stood near the curb, watching this exchange with quiet attention. Annie wondered when he had last seen neighbors guard one another without contracts, cameras, or paid patrols. This block did not have money, but it had eyes. It had women who noticed when a porch light changed. It had men who came out pretending to check mail when strangers parked too long. It had people who might gossip on Monday and still show up with soup on Tuesday. Bennett directed them into 2 vehicles. Rose and Annie rode with Marcus. William followed with Bennett in an unmarked car. A patrol unit rolled ahead without lights. Another trailed 2 blocks back. As Marcus pulled away, Rose watched the house through the rear window. Annie turned toward her. You okay? No, Rose said, but I'm present. The answer was so Rose that Annie reached back and took her hand. The ride to the hotel took longer than it should have because Marcus avoided highways and main intersections. He drove through old neighborhoods, past closed barber shops, churches with letterboards, gas stations with bright signs, and a laundromat where a man folded clothes under fluorescent light as if the world had not tilted. Rose looked out the window. This city has too many rich men building things and too many poor folks cleaning up what they leave behind. Marcus did not answer right away. Yes, ma'am. Annie looked at him. You always say that? When it's true. Rose made a sound that meant she approved, though she would never say so too soon. The hotel was not flashy. It sat near the airport, clean, busy, and anonymous, the kind of place where flight crews came and went at all hours. Marcus chose it for that reason. Too many people moving for one stranger to stand out easily. Too many cameras for someone to slip around unseen. They entered through a side door instead of the lobby. A woman from Marcus's team met them with key cards and a rolling cart. She introduced herself as Dana, former sheriff's deputy, steady voice, gray braid tucked under a cap. Mrs. Carter, we have a room with 2 beds near the stairwell, not next to it. Ice machine is down the hall, but I'll get anything you need so you don't have to step out. Rose looked her over. You eat dinner? Dana blinked. Not yet, ma'am. Then don't stand in a hallway all night hungry. That makes people sloppy. Dana smiled. I'll fix that. In the room, Annie helped Rose sit on the bed nearest the bathroom. The air smelled of clean sheets and hotel carpet. Marcus checked the adjoining door, the window lock, the hallway peephole, and the phone. Dana placed bottled water on the desk. William arrived 10 minutes later with Bennett. He stayed near the door, as if he understood the room belonged to Rose and Annie now, not him. Bennett updated them. The call came from a prepaid phone. It pinged near Midtown, then went dead. We're checking cameras. Officers are at Charles Harrington's condo and office. No contact yet. William's face tightened. He's already moving. Maybe, Bennett said. Or maybe he wants us to think he is. Rose opened the Waffle House bag at last. Food's getting cold while rich men play chess. No one knew what to say to that. She handed Annie the hash browns, then looked at William. You eaten? I'm not hungry. That wasn't my question. William glanced at Annie, then took the toast Rose handed him on a napkin. Thank you. Rose nodded once. Fear works better on an empty stomach. Don't help it. Annie sat on the edge of the bed and tried to eat. The food tasted like salt and safety and exhaustion. Her hands had finally stopped shaking, but inside she felt delayed, like her body had not caught up to the fact that she was no longer at the site. Bennett's phone rang. She answered, listened, then stepped away from the door. William watched her face. What is it? Bennett ended the call. They found Charles's car in the parking garage under his condo. William said, and Charles? Not there. The room went still. Bennett continued. Security footage shows him leaving 40 minutes ago with a duffel bag. Different jacket, baseball cap, no driver. He used the service elevator. Marcus cursed softly. Rose set down her fork, so the snake shed his skin. Bennett looked at William. Where would he go? William rubbed both hands over his face. For the first time since Annie met him, he looked not like a billionaire or a target, but like an older brother trying to remember the boy his brother used to be. There's an old hunting cabin outside Macon, he said. Our father bought it in the 90s. It isn't in the company's name anymore. Charles kept it after the estate split. Bennett was already typing into her phone. Address? William gave it. Annie looked at Rose, then at the curtained window. Somewhere beyond the hotel walls, Charles Harrington was loose, angry, and close enough to call her phone. She had thought throwing the bag into the pit was the brave part. Now she understood bravery sometimes meant waiting through the night while the danger learned your name. Bennett moved fast after William gave the cabin address. She stepped into the hallway, phone to her ear, and her voice dropped into the tone of someone building a net one knot at a time. Annie could hear pieces through the door. Bibb County, State Patrol, warrant request, family property, attempted homicide. Inside the room, Rose finished half her hash browns and pushed the container toward Annie. Eat the rest. I'm not hungry. That keeps coming up tonight, and nobody has convinced me it matters. Annie took the fork because arguing with Rose took more energy than chewing. William stood near the window without touching the curtain. Marcus had already told everyone not to open it. Still, William kept facing that way, as if his brother might appear in the parking lot by force of memory. Rose watched him. You too close? William turned. We were. That means no. He gave a tired breath. No. Not for a long time. Annie looked up from the food. She had heard Charles's voice only once, but it had followed her into the hotel room. Calm. Certain. Mean, without needing to shout. William rubbed his thumb across the side of his hand. Charles was 10 when our mother died. I was 20. My father stopped being a father after that. He became a man who signed checks and expected sons to become useful. Rose said, that kind of grief makes a cold house. It did. William looked at Annie, then away. I left early. College, work, job sites. Charles stayed closer to my father. By the time I came back with the company growing, he had learned to smile at people he hated. Annie said, and you trusted him? William looked at her then. I wanted to. That answer felt honest in a way that made the room quieter. Marcus's phone buzzed. He read the message, then went to the door and spoke softly to Dana in the hall. When he came back, his face had tightened. William noticed. What? Bennett's people checked the cabin utilities. Power's active, water too, Someone's been paying the bills through an account tied to a holding company. Charles. Looks that way. Rose set her fork down. A man planning wickedness always keeps a place to run. Marcus nodded once. Yes, ma'am. Bennett returned, closing the door behind her. State Patrol has units moving toward the cabin, but they won't rush in blind. We're waiting on a search warrant tied to the attempted murder charge and the evidence from the site. William straightened. How long? Soon, not instant. Charles could be gone by then. He could also be watching for exactly that kind of panic. William hated that. Annie could see it in his jaw. Men like him were used to action, not waiting in a hotel room while others held the steering wheel. Bennett turned to Annie. Any new calls or texts? Annie checked the temporary phone on the nightstand. No. Good. Keep it on, but don't answer unless I say so. Rose looked between them. What if he calls again? Bennett answered. Then I want him talking, but safely. William shook his head. No. Annie is not bait. No one said she was, Bennett said. You're thinking it. I'm thinking he may contact the person who ruined his plan. That's different from asking her to carry the risk for us. Annie put the food down. He already called me. Everyone looked at her. She hated the feeling, but she kept going. I'm not saying I want to talk to him. I don't. But if he calls, pretending I'm not part of this won't make me safer. Rose's voice sharpened. Annie, I know, Grandma. I'm not trying to be brave just to be brave. Good, because brave without sense will make an old woman bury you early. Annie swallowed. I'm saying if he calls, Detective Bennett should decide. Not Mr. Harrington, not me alone, not fear. Bennett studied her for a moment. That's a clear position. William looked at Annie as if seeing another piece of her he had not expected. You shouldn't have to think this way. Annie gave him a small, tired look. A lot of people shouldn't have to think a lot of ways. No one answered that. The phone rang. Unknown number. The sound cut through the room worse than the beeping from the pit because this time it was looking for Annie by name. Rose reached for her hand. Marcus stepped closer. Bennett crossed the room and looked at the screen without touching it. William did not move. Second ring. Bennett said, I'm going to answer. Annie, you do not speak unless I tell you. Understood? Annie nodded. Bennett tapped the phone, put it on speaker, and set it on the desk. This is Detective Bennett. For a moment, only faint air moved through the line. Then Charles spoke. I asked for Annie Carter. William's face hardened. Rose closed her eyes once, then opened them. Bennett said, You got me. That's unfortunate. You can call it that. I call it your last chance to stop making things worse. Charles laughed softly. You don't even know what worse is. Bennett leaned over the desk. I know 2 of your men are in custody. I know the device is secured. I know your brother is alive. I know your voice is now tied to a threat against a witness. My brother always did surround himself with people who thought they were useful. William stepped forward, but Marcus caught his eye and shook his head. Bennett said, Where are you, Charles? Close enough. Annie's skin went cold. Rose squeezed her hand hard. Charles continued, Annie, I know you're listening. You made a poor choice today. You don't know these people. William won't remember you once the cameras leave. The police will write their reports and go home. But people like you always go back to where you can be found. Annie's throat tightened, but she stayed quiet. William looked like the words had cut him. Bennett said, Threatening her only helps my case. I'm not threatening. I'm explaining consequences. That sounds like something a jury will enjoy. Another soft laugh. Juries love stories. Here's one. Poor girl trespasses on private property. Steals from a site. Panics when caught. Creates confusion. Tampers with a bag. Then records whatever she needs to save herself. You think a cracked little phone makes her clean? Annie stared at the phone. There it was. The story he had prepared for her. Not just denial. A cage made from every assumption people already carried. Rose spoke before Bennett could stop her. Her voice was low, controlled, and old enough to carry weight. You listen to me, Charles Harrington. My granddaughter has been poor, but she has never been cheap. There is a difference, and men like you never learn it. The line went silent. Bennett looked at Rose, half warning, half respect. Charles returned, colder now. And who is this? Rose Carter, the woman who raised the person who stopped you. William lowered his head for a second. Charles said. Then you raised her badly. She should have minded her place. Rose leaned toward the phone. Her place was wherever God needed a witness. Annie felt tears rise and fought them back. Bennett picked up the phone. That's enough, Charles said. Tell William I'll see him before this ends. The call disconnected. Bennett immediately handed the phone to Marcus. Get that to the tech unit. Marcus took it into the hall. William stood very still. He's not at the cabin. Bennett turned. Why do you say that? He said he'd see me. He wants me thinking about him, not running from police in Macon. The cabin is a decoy. Maybe. William's eyes sharpened. No, Charles doesn't run first. He punishes first. Annie wiped her palms on her jeans. Then where would he go? William looked at her, and the answer seemed to cost him. To the company, he said. My office. If he can't kill me quietly, he'll try to destroy what I built before they take him. Bennett opened the door. Marcus stepped back in. William said, Harrington Tower, downtown. Bennett was already moving. I'll notify units. Rose looked at Annie. Seems we won't be sleeping. Annie picked up the temporary phone from the desk, now silent and heavy. No, she said. Not yet. Bennett did not let William leave the hotel. He tried. Annie saw it before he said a word. He reached for his phone, looked toward the door, and in that small shift of his shoulders, she understood the kind of man he was when someone threatened what belonged to him. He moved toward the problem. He did not wait for permission. Bennett stepped into his path. No, William stopped. You don't know the tower. I know enough to keep a witness and an attempted murder victim from walking into another setup. My people are in that building. Then call them. My office has files Charles could destroy. Contracts, board documents, acquisition records, internal investigations. Then call someone who has keys and isn't you. William's jaw tightened. Detective. No, Bennett said. You are not going downtown because your brother said something designed to make you go downtown. The room held still around that. Rose sat on the edge of the bed with her sweater around her shoulders, watching both of them as if they were arguing in her kitchen. Annie stood near the desk with the temporary phone in her hand. Marcus had one ear to his own phone, relaying instructions to Dana in the hall. William looked at Marcus. Get a team to Harrington Tower. Already moving, Marcus said. But Detective Bennett is right. If Charles wants you there, we don't give him that. William stared at him. You work for me. Marcus did not blink. Yes, sir. Tonight that means telling you no. For a second, Annie thought William might explode. Instead, he looked away toward the curtained window. Rose spoke into the silence. A man can build a tower and still be foolish enough to run into it when somebody lights a match. William turned to her. She lifted one hand. Don't look offended. I'm too old to decorate common sense. Annie almost smiled, then caught herself. Bennett's phone rang. She answered, listened, and put it on speaker so the room could hear. A male voice came through. Detective, this is Sergeant Malloy. Units are at Harrington Tower. Lobby security says Charles Harrington entered through the parking level 20 minutes ago using an executive access card. William took one step forward. Is he still inside? Malloy answered, unknown. Security cameras on levels 46 through 52 went down 12 minutes ago. Building engineer says it looks like a manual override from the executive server room. William's face hardened. That server room is next to my office. Bennett asked, any civilians? Night security, maintenance crew, cleaning staff, a few finance people on 49. We're evacuating lower floors quietly. SWAT is being notified. William closed his eyes briefly. He's not destroying files. He's locking the upper floors. Bennett looked at him. Why? Leverage. He'll claim he has evidence against me. Maybe plant it. Maybe leak it. Maybe hold someone until I come. Annie heard her own voice before she thought better of it. He wants another exchange. Everyone looked at her. She kept going because the thought had arrived whole. At the site, he sent men to make you carry the thing that would ruin you. On the phone, he tried to make me sound like the problem. Now he goes to your building where your name is on the door. He keeps trying to make other people hold what he did. William did not answer right away. Bennett watched Annie closely. That's not a bad read. Rose looked at her granddaughter with pride she tried to hide. She notices what folks hope she won't. Marcus's phone buzzed. He listened, then said, Sir, Charles just called the building's general counsel from your office line. He says he'll release documents proving you orchestrated the attempted payoff at the construction site unless you meet him in your office within 30 minutes. William let out a short, bitter breath. There it is. Bennett took the phone from Marcus and spoke into it. This is Detective Bennett. Record every call. Do not negotiate. Keep him talking if he calls again. But nobody agrees to send Mr. Harrington. Marcus nodded as she handed it back. William said, if he releases forged documents, the company collapses before morning. Bennett replied, if you walk into his hands, you may not see morning. The words hit hard. Annie saw Rose shift, not from fear for William exactly, but from recognition. Older people understood how often pride and death stood closer together than young folks liked to admit. William looked at Annie then, and for a moment she saw the anger drain out, leaving something raw underneath. My brother called you by name, he said, because of me. Annie shook her head. Because of him. Still doesn't mean you get to run off and make it worse. Rose murmured, that's my girl. The temporary phone buzzed again. Everyone froze. Unknown number. Bennett held out her hand. Annie gave it to her. This time the detective did not answer immediately. She motioned for Marcus to start recording, then tapped speaker. Bennett said, Detective Bennett. Charles sighed. You people keep standing between me and the person I call. You keep calling a witness in an attempted murder investigation. That makes it my concern. Put William on. No. William stepped closer to the phone. Bennett raised a warning hand, but he spoke anyway, calm and low. I'm here, Charles. The line went quiet, then Charles laughed once. Big brother. Still letting other people carry your spine? William's face did not change. You tried to kill me with a bag in a dead construction site. Don't talk to me about courage. Rose's eyebrows rose slightly. Annie could tell she approved of that one. Charles's voice sharpened. You always thought the company was yours because Dad handed you the first chance. I built the company. You built a monument to yourself. I kept people happy while you played king. You hired men to kill me. I hired men to show you what it feels like when the world stops bending around your name. Bennett leaned toward the phone. Charles, this call is being recorded. Keep going. I know it is. That changed the room. Bennett's eyes narrowed. Then why call? Charles said. Because I'm done hiding. William comes to Harrington Tower, or the files go out. Every news desk in Atlanta gets proof that he carried cash to silence blackmailers at his own property. And the girl? I'll make sure they know she was trespassing, stealing, and paid for her little performance. Annie's throat tightened. Rose took her hand. William said, Leave her out of this. She put herself in it. No, I did. Your fight is with me. My fight has always been with you. Bennett mouthed to Marcus, Trace. Marcus nodded, already on another line. Charles continued, 30 minutes, William. Your office. Alone. Or by sunrise, your name is Ash. The call ended. No one spoke. Then Bennett said, He knows we're tracing and doesn't care. That means he's either not where the call says he is, or he's prepared for us to come. William looked at the floor, thinking. My office has a private conference room, glass wall, city view, separate service corridor. There's also an old freight elevator tied to the construction access from the renovation 2 years ago. It doesn't show on the public directory. Marcus frowned. You never told me that. It was sealed after the renovation. Can it still run? If someone in the executive server room overrides the system, yes. Bennett turned to her phone. Malloy, did you catch that? The sergeant's voice came back. We did. Checking freight access now. Annie looked at the temporary phone, then at William. He keeps wanting you alone. Yes. So don't give him you. Bennett looked at her. What are you thinking? Annie hesitated. She was not police. She was not security. She was supposed to be the person protected in the room, not the person suggesting anything. But Charles had built his plan on what people looked like from a distance. A rich man with a bag. A poor woman with cans. A brother with a title. A witness with no power. He needs to believe Mr. Harrington is coming, Annie said. Not actually go. Just believe it. Marcus nodded slowly. Decoy vehicle. Bennett said. Controlled call. Keep him watching the front while units enter through freight or service access. William looked at Annie. You saw that? I saw him at the site without meeting him, she said. Men like him don't just want to win. They want people to walk into the story they wrote. Rose squeezed her hand again. And the Lord helped them when somebody reads ahead. Bennett was already moving. All right. Nobody leaves this room except under protection. Marcus, coordinate with Malloy. William, you tell us every entrance, every old elevator, every private hallway in that tower. Annie, stay by your grandmother. Annie nodded, but her eyes stayed on the phone. Somewhere downtown, Charles Harrington was waiting inside a tower with his brother's name on it. And for the first time that night, Annie understood that stopping one bag from being picked up had only opened the door to the rest of the truth. William gave them the tower piece by piece, not the way a tour guide would, not with pride. He spoke like a man handing over a map of his own ribs. Main lobby on Peachtree, he said, standing beside the hotel desk while Marcus opened a building schematic on his tablet. Executive elevators on the east wall, service elevators behind the loading dock. Freight access is here, west side, past the old renovation corridor. It was supposed to be sealed, but if Charles is in the server room, he may have opened it. Detective Bennett stood with her phone pressed to her ear, relaying each detail to Sergeant Malloy downtown. Any private stairwells? One between 48 and 50. 2. Fire code required it, but access is restricted by badge. Charles has a badge? He was never supposed to have mine, William said, but he knows people who like favors. Rose sat on the edge of the bed, her hands folded over her medicine bag. She watched William without softness, but not without understanding. Annie sat beside her, the temporary phone on the nightstand between them like a snake that had gone quiet. Marcus pointed at the tablet. If Charles expects Mr. Harrington through the lobby, he'll watch the main elevators and parking garage. Bennett nodded. Then we give him something to watch. William looked up. A decoy. Not you, Bennett said. I heard you the first 3 times. Good. Hear me the 4th. Marcus tapped his screen. I have a driver close to Mr. Harrington's build. Same height if he stays seated. We put him in the rear of William's sedan. Pull up at the tower. Visible enough for building cameras. Malloy's team moves through freight access while Charles is focused on the front. Annie listened, trying to follow the pieces. Cars, elevators, badges, floors. Rich people's buildings had so many hidden paths. Poor people's homes had front doors that stuck in the rain and windows that did not lock right. Bennett said, we need Charles talking when the decoy arrives. He'll be watching. He'll call. William's face tightened. He'll call Annie again. No, Rose said. Everyone turned. Rose did not raise her voice. He has used my granddaughter's name enough for one night. Bennett answered carefully. Mrs. Carter, I agree. But if he calls that phone, we control the call. Annie does not have to speak. Annie looked at Rose, then at Bennett. What if he won't talk unless I do? William said, absolutely not. Annie looked at him. You don't get to make that decision for me. I'm not trying to. Yes, you are, just softer than before. That stopped him. Rose watched Annie with worry in her face, but she did not interrupt. That was Rose's trust. Not permission, but space. Bennett stepped closer. Miss Carter, I will not put words in your mouth. If he calls, and if I decide it helps, I may ask you to say one sentence. Nothing more. You can refuse. Annie nodded slowly. What sentence? Something true, that you're listening, that you have the video, that you won't take it back. Rose closed her eyes for a second. William shook his head. Detective, Bennett cut him off. Mr. Harrington, I know you feel responsible, but she is already involved. Pretending she is not will not protect her. Controlling how she is involved might. Annie felt the truth of that land heavy in the room. Marcus's phone buzzed. Decoy vehicle is 2 minutes from Harrington Tower. Malloy's team is in position near the west service entrance. They found the freight access. It's open. Bennett lifted her phone, put Malloy on speaker. The sergeant's voice came through low, with radio noise behind it. We've got movement on 50. Cameras? William frowned. 2? Could be a guard, hostage, or reflection through glass. We're not guessing, Bennett said. Decoy begins in 2. No entry until Charles confirms attention on front or makes contact. The temporary phone rang. Unknown number. No one moved for half a breath. Then Bennett picked it up, started the recorder, and answered on speaker. This is Bennett. Charles's voice came through immediately. I said William, not his guard dog. Bennett looked at William but did not speak. Charles continued. Nice car in front of the tower. Tinted windows. Predictable. Bennett mouthed. He's watching. Marcus relayed it at once. Charles laughed softly. Come on, William. Step out. Be the man you sell to newspapers. William leaned close to the phone, but Bennett held up one finger. Wait, Charles said. Or maybe you're still hiding behind Annie Carter. Is she there? Did she enjoy the hotel? I hope the room is nicer than what she's used to. Annie's face warmed with anger. Rose's hand found hers. Bennett whispered, one sentence, only if you choose. Annie leaned toward the phone. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. I'm here, Charles, and I still have the truth. Silence. Then Charles spoke, lower. Truth is whatever survives the morning. No, Annie said before Bennett could stop her. Truth is what scared you enough to call me. Rose's grip tightened, but not to stop her. Bennett took over. Charles, units are at your cabin, your condo, your office, and your tower. This ends with you walking out alive or being carried out in cuffs. Those are the choices. Charles ignored her. William, are you listening? William stepped close. Yes. You brought her into this. No, you did. I'm going to release everything. Then release it, William said. Everyone looked at him. Charles went quiet. William's voice stayed low. You think I still care more about the company than the people you threatened? I don't. Charles's breath shifted on the line. Marcus whispered, Malloy's team moving. Bennett kept her eyes on the phone. Charles said, You're lying. No, William said. I'm tired. That seemed to reach Charles more than anger would have. Sergeant Malloy's voice came through Marcus's phone, barely audible. Freight team inside. 48. Moving up. Charles spoke again, sharper. If I go down, you go down. Maybe, William said. But Annie Carter walks out of this with her name clean. That matters more tonight. Annie looked at him. She had no answer for what that did to her chest. A crash came through the line. Charles cursed away from the phone. Malloy's voice cut in. Contact on 50. Suspect moving toward private stairwell. Bennett snapped. Block the stairwell. Marcus relayed to his team. William stood rigid, both hands on the desk. The phone line filled with footsteps. Then Charles breathing hard. William, I'm here. You think this makes you noble? No, William said. I think it makes me late. Another crash. Shouts now. Police commands. Distant, but clear. Charles Harrington. Hands where we can see them. The line scraped, as if the phone had fallen. Then Charles shouted, not at police, but into the room, into the phone, into whatever was left of the life he had tried to steal. She ruined everything. Rose lifted her chin. No. She revealed it. No one on the other end answered her, but the words seemed to settle over the hotel room all the same. There was a struggle, brief and rough. Then a voice called, Suspect in custody. Repeat, Suspect in custody. Bennett closed her eyes for 1 second, then opened them. Malloy, confirm, identity. A pause. Confirmed. Charles Harrington. William sat down slowly in the chair by the desk, as if his body had waited all night to admit it was tired. Annie let go of Rose's hand only when she realized she had been holding it too tightly. The temporary phone still lay on the desk. The call connected, picking up the noise of officers, radios, and Charles breathing hard somewhere high above downtown Atlanta. Then Bennett ended the call. For the first time since the construction site, there was no ringing, no beeping, no threat in the room, only silence, and the heavy work of understanding what came next. By sunrise, Charles Harrington's name was no longer spoken like a family matter. It moved through police radios, courthouse calls, company emergency lines, and the quiet phones of men who had once laughed with him over steak dinners. He was booked before most of Atlanta had finished its first cup of coffee. By then, Detective Bennett had already sent the video from Annie's old phone to the district attorney's office, along with the recording of Charles's calls, the bomb squad report, the statements from Evan Cole, and the first inventory from Harrington Tower. Annie did not sleep. She sat in the hotel chair near the window, though the curtains stayed closed, wearing one of Rose's old cardigans over her t-shirt. The room had gone still after Charles was taken, but her body did not understand that stillness meant safety. Every sound in the hallway made her look up. Every car door outside turned her stomach. Rose had slept for maybe an hour, sitting upright with pillows behind her back, one hand still near her medicine bag. When she woke, She did not ask whether Annie had slept. She only said, "Some nights don't end when the sun comes up." Annie nodded. "Feels like that." Bennett returned around 7 with coffee, orange juice, and a folder under one arm. Marcus followed with breakfast biscuits from a drive-thru and a look that said he had not slept either. William came last. He had changed into a clean shirt but looked older than the night before. Not weak, just stripped down. Rose accepted the coffee from Bennett and studied the cup. "This from the lobby?" "Yes, ma'am." "Then I'll drink it because the Lord teaches gratitude, not because it's good coffee." Bennett almost smiled. "Fair." William stayed near the door until Rose pointed at the chair across from her. "Sit down, Mr. Harrington. You hovering makes everybody tired." He sat. Bennett opened the folder. "Here's where things stand. Charles has been charged initially with conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, witness intimidation, use of an explosive device, and obstruction. More charges will follow. Evan Cole is cooperating. Ray Voss is not, but his phone is doing plenty of talking for him." Annie's hands tightened around the orange juice bottle. "What about what Charles said on the phone? About making it look like I lied?" "We recovered draft emails on a laptop in your brother's office," Bennett said, looking at William. "They were prepared for several news outlets. The language matches what he said on the call. He was going to claim Miss Carter trespassed, tampered with evidence, and was paid to create confusion." Rose set her coffee down slowly. "He wrote that before he ever met her." "Yes." Annie stared at the carpet. That hurt in a way she had not expected. Charles had not needed to know her to use the world against her. He had guessed what people might believe, and built a lie around it. William spoke quietly. "I want those emails made public when legally possible." Bennett looked at him. "That's not your call today." "I know. I'm saying I won't fight it. If my company lawyers try to bury anything, call me directly." Rose looked at him over her glasses. "That is the first useful rich thing you've said." William took it with a small nod. "I'll try to add more," Bennett continued. The tower search also found forged documents meant to connect William to the cash at the site. Fake memos, fake payoff notes, even a draft press statement saying he had gone to the property to settle a blackmail demand. Annie looked at William. That was the story he wanted people to believe. "Yes," William said. "And if you hadn't recorded those men before I arrived, it might have worked." Marcus placed the breakfast bag on the small table. "There's more. Charles had access logs from the construction site. He knew people came through there for scrap." Annie looked up. "He knew?" Marcus nodded. "Looks like it. There were security complaints from the property management company. Photos from trail cameras near the fence. Not just you. Several people." Rose's face hardened. "So he picked a place where poor folks would be easy to blame if something went wrong." Bennett said, "That's how it looks." The room went quiet again, but this silence had a different weight. It was not fear now, it was recognition. The site had not been random. The abandoned fence, the missing security, the people coming in for cans and wire. Charles had seen all of that not as human desperation, but as cover. Annie felt anger rise under her ribs. "He thought if I saw something, nobody would care." William looked at her. "Yes. And at first, you almost didn't." He did not defend himself. "Yes." Rose looked between them. "Truth without excuses." "Good. Keep going." William leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Miss Carter, there will be reporters. Maybe today. Maybe by tonight. My company will issue a statement, but not without your approval where your name is involved. You do not owe anyone a camera, a quote, a picture, or a smile." Annie gave a tired laugh. "You think they'll ask for a smile? I think people ask young women for all kinds of things when they should be saying thank you." Rose made a sound of agreement. Bennett said, "For now, your name is in police records, but not released publicly by us. That may not hold forever. Defense attorneys, court filings, leaks. I won't lie about that." Annie looked at Rose. "We can't go home, can we?" "Not today," Bennett said. "We recommend at least a few days elsewhere. Charles is in custody, but we're still identifying anyone who helped him." William said, "I can arrange a house." Rose looked at him. "A hotel was one thing, a house is another." "I understand." "Do you?" "I think so." Rose shook her head. "You think with a checkbook. I'm asking you to think with respect." William sat back. Then tell me what respect looks like here. Rose looked at Annie first, giving her room to answer. Annie took a breath. It means we choose. Not you placing us somewhere and calling it protection. It means my grandma knows where we are. It means if you pay for something, you don't own our decisions after. William nodded slowly. Agreed. And I want a lawyer, Annie added. William's expression sharpened, but not in anger. Yes, you should have one. Not your company lawyer. No, independent. You choose. I pay if you allow it. Rose nodded once. Better. Bennett closed the folder. That's wise. A witness advocate from the DA's office can also speak with you today. Annie rubbed her eyes. She felt as if people kept adding doors to a hallway she had never meant to enter. Lawyer. Advocate. Reporters. Statements. Hearings. Her old life of cans, bus routes, and Rose's medicine had been hard, but at least she understood the shape of it. William seemed to see the exhaustion settle over her. This does not all have to be solved in this room. Rose gave him a look. Some of it does. People with money like to leave rooms and let others clean up the details. He lowered his gaze. Then I'll stay for the details you want me in. Marcus's phone rang. He answered, listened, then looked at Bennett. They found another phone in Charles's tower office. Draft message scheduled for release at 8:30. It names Annie. Bennett stood. Was it sent? No. Tech team stopped it. Annie's breath left her. What did it say? Rose asked. Marcus hesitated. Rose's voice sharpened. Don't protect us from poison after it's already in the cup. Marcus looked at Bennett. She nodded. He said, it claimed Annie was paid by William to create a false scene at the site so he could frame Charles and remove him from the company. Annie laughed once, but there was no humor in it. Paid? I had $12 in my pocket. William's face went pale with anger. He was going to drag her through the mud to save himself. Bennett said, he was, but the message didn't go out. Not that one, Rose said. But lies don't need permission to travel. Somebody will say it. No one contradicted her. Annie stood and walked to the small mirror above the desk. She looked at herself. Tired eyes. Hair pulled back badly. Dust still caught near her collar despite washing her hands 3 times. She did not look like the person in Charles's lie. She did not feel like a hero either. She looked like someone who wanted to go home and could not. Behind her, William said, Annie. She met his eyes in the mirror. I cannot stop every lie before it appears, he said. But I can stand in front of the first one. She turned around. What does that mean? It means I make a public statement before anyone else writes your story. I say you saved my life. I say you were not paid. I say the police have evidence. I say my brother is responsible. And I say your family's privacy is to be respected. Bennett raised a hand. Careful. You can't poison the case. I'll clear it with the DA. Rose studied him. And you won't make her stand beside you like a prop? No. Annie looked at him for a long moment. Use my name only if Detective Bennett says it's already going to come out. Agreed. And don't call me poor in front of cameras. William looked struck. I wouldn't. People do. They think it makes the story sweeter. Rose said, pain is not seasoning. William nodded. Then I won't. Bennett's phone buzzed. She read the message and let out a short breath. DA wants Annie's video preserved as the cornerstone evidence. They're moving fast on the first hearing. Charles will be in court this afternoon. Rose looked at the curtained window. Then the day did come after all. Annie sat back down beside her grandmother. Her body was tired, but something inside her had steadied. Charles had tried to build a story around her before he knew her name. Now, for the first time, she would have a say in how the truth left the room. William rose from the chair. I'll make the calls. Rose lifted one finger. Mr. Harrington. He stopped. If you stand in front of a lie, stand straight. Don't make my granddaughter carry your shame for you. William looked at Annie, then back to Rose. I won't, he said. And this time, Annie believed he understood what the promise cost. William's statement went out at 10:12 that morning, not from a podium, not with flags behind him, and not with Annie standing at his side. It was written, reviewed by the district attorney's office, and released through Harrington Development Group, with only the facts the case allowed. William Harrington confirmed that he had been the target of a criminal plot at a South Atlanta construction site. He confirmed that Annie Carter had warned him before he accepted a bag that later proved to contain an explosive device. He confirmed that she had not been paid, hired, coached, or connected to Harrington Development in any way. He asked the public and the press to respect her family's privacy. The last line was the one Rose read twice. Miss Carter acted with courage when many people with more power would have looked away. Rose sat in the hotel chair with her glasses low on her nose. That sentence is almost good. Annie looked over from the edge of the bed. Almost? He still sounds like a man who has staff. William, standing near the small desk, nodded. I do. At least you know. Detective Bennett had left for the courthouse. Marcus stayed in the hallway with Dana. A witness advocate from the DA's office, a woman named Patricia Wells, had come and gone after explaining what Annie could expect. More interviews, maybe a preliminary hearing, possibly testimony if Charles did not plead. She had spoken plainly, which Rose appreciated, and left her card beside Bennett's. By noon, the first news alerts appeared. Annie's name was not in the earliest headlines, but the story moved fast anyway. Billionaire targeted. Brother arrested. Explosive device found. Anonymous young woman credited with warning. Some stations showed old footage of the abandoned site. Others showed Harrington Tower, where Charles had been taken out in handcuffs before dawn. Annie watched for 3 minutes, then turned the television off. I don't want to see them talk about me like I'm weather. Rose patted the bed beside her. Then don't give them your afternoon. William's phone kept buzzing. He ignored most calls, answered only a few, and kept each one short. Board members wanted reassurance. Lawyers wanted strategy. Reporters wanted quotes. Investors wanted calm. William gave none of them the satisfaction of sounding shaken, but Annie could see that the morning was wearing him down. Around 1 o'clock, Marcus stepped inside. Charles is appearing before the judge at 2. Detective Bennett says the DA will ask for no bond. William looked at Annie and Rose. You don't need to attend. Annie answered before Rose could. Good. William seemed relieved. Good. Rose looked at him. You going? Yes. Why? He's my brother. That's a reason to grieve, not always a reason to go. William sat down slowly. If I don't see him, I'll imagine something worse than the truth. Rose took that in. Then go see the truth. But don't let it talk you out of what happened. At the courthouse that afternoon, William sat in the second row behind the prosecutor. He did not ask Annie to come, and for that Annie was grateful. Bennett called afterward, her voice tired but steady. Charles had been denied bond. Evan Cole's cooperation was entered into the record. Ray Voss stayed silent. The device report, the phone threats, and the tower arrest were enough to keep Charles in custody. Rose listened on speaker. So he sleeps behind a locked door tonight? Yes, ma'am, Bennett said. Good. That makes 2 old women in Atlanta breathe easier. Bennett paused. 2? Me and whoever raised you. For the first time all day, Bennett laughed. That evening, William returned to the hotel, but he did not come empty-handed. He brought no flowers, no large check, no cameras. He brought a folder and placed it on the desk only after asking permission. What is that? Annie asked. Options, he said, not decisions. Rose gestured for him to continue. William opened the folder. First, medical bills. Mrs. Carter, with your consent, an independent attorney can review any outstanding medical debt, insurance problems, pharmacy costs, and arrange payment through a victim assistance trust. Not my company, not tied to publicity, not requiring interviews. Rose's face did not change, but Annie knew what those words meant. The bills in the kitchen drawer. The insulin Rose sometimes stretched 2 days longer than she should. The cardiologist appointment they had delayed because the copay hurt too much. Rose said, and what does that trust want from us? Nothing. Nothing is rare. Yes, ma'am. What else? William turned a page. Housing. Your current address is now part of a police protection file. It may become known through court proceedings. Marcus has identified 3 rental homes and 2 small houses available for purchase in quiet neighborhoods near transit and medical care. If you choose to move, I will cover it. If you choose not to, I will pay for security upgrades at your current home. Annie leaned forward. Purchase? In both your names, William said. No lien, no company ownership, no conditions. Annie's first reaction was not joy. It was suspicion so old it felt like instinct. People don't give houses. Rose looked at her. Some do. The question is why. William met Annie's eyes. Because I would have died holding that bag if you had done what everyone expected you to do and kept walking. That's guilt. Yes, he said. Some of it is. Rose's eyes sharpened. William did not look away. But guilt is only where it starts. The rest is responsibility. Annie said nothing. William continued. Third, education. Not because I think you need saving. Because Detective Bennett told me you handled the video, the details, and the statement better than some trained adults she knows. Marcus told me you noticed the side panel under pressure. If you want school, technical training, criminal justice, engineering, anything close to what your mind already does, I'll fund it through an independent scholarship. Annie looked down at her hands. She had not told him about community college. She had not told him about old electronics she fixed for neighbors, or the laptop she wanted but could never justify buying, or how she sometimes watched forensic technology videos on her cracked phone after Rose fell asleep. How did you know? She asked. I didn't, William said. I listened to people who knew more than I did. Rose gave a small nod. Progress. The room grew quiet. Annie stood and walked to the window, though she did not open the curtain. On the other side were parking lot lights, strangers, security, the long day after the longest night of her life. She thought of the sack of cans in Marcus's SUV, of her grandmother's house, of the bag in the pit, of Charles building lies before he knew her. Will people say I took money because I lied? Annie asked. William answered softly. Some people may. She turned. Then why make it easy for them? Rose spoke before William could. Baby, people who want to dirty your name will use dust, mud, or clean water. Don't let liars decide whether you get help. Annie looked at her grandmother. Rose's voice softened. We know what you did. God knows. The law knows. The rest can catch up or stay foolish. William closed the folder. Nothing has to be accepted tonight. Good, Annie said. Because I can't think tonight. No one should ask you to. Rose reached for the folder. I'll look. Looking is not agreeing. William handed it to her. Understood. Later, after Bennett called again to confirm there had been no new threats, after Marcus changed shifts with Dana, after Rose finally slept, Annie stepped into the hallway. William was there, seated in a chair near the elevators, tie loosened, eyes open. You don't have to sit out here, Annie said. Yes, I do. No, Marcus has people for that. William looked toward the closed hotel room door. I don't mean for security. Annie leaned against the wall. You feel bad. I do. You keep saying that like it explains everything. It doesn't. She studied him. When you first saw me, what did you think? He did not answer quickly. I thought you were trouble. Because I threw the bag? Yes. And before that? William was quiet. Annie nodded. That's the part you don't want to say. He rubbed his hands together once. I saw the sack. The clothes. The sight. I made assumptions before you finished speaking. Most people do. I know. No, Annie said. You know now. He accepted the correction. For a moment, neither spoke. Down the hall, the ice machine hummed. William said, My father used to tell me a man's worth was measured by what he built. Rose's voice came from inside the room, not asleep after all. Your father was wrong. Annie turned. The door was cracked open. Rose continued. A man's worth is measured by who is safe when he has power. William lowered his head. Annie looked at him, and for the first time, she saw not a billionaire, not a headline, not even the man who had doubted her at the sight. She saw someone old enough to have made mistakes and, maybe, still living enough to repair some of them. Get some sleep, Mr. Harrington, she said. He nodded. You too, Miss Carter. She went back into the room and closed the door gently. Rose was lying with her eyes shut, but her mouth curved a little. You heard all that? Annie whispered. I'm old, not deaf. Annie climbed into the other bed, still dressed, and stared at the ceiling. For the first time since the beeping started in the pit, she let herself imagine a morning that did not begin with fear. 3 months later, Annie Carter stood on the porch of a small white house with blue shutters and watched Rose argue with a delivery man about where to place a rocking chair. Not there, Rose said, pointing with her cane. If you put it there, the morning sun will hit my left eye. The young man shifted the chair 2 feet. Rose frowned. Now it looks lonely. Annie leaned against the porch post, smiling despite herself. Grandma, it's a chair. It is never just a chair. A chair tells people whether they're welcome to sit. The deliveryman looked confused, but he moved it again. This time Rose nodded. That'll do. The house sat on a quiet street not far from a bus line, a grocery store, and the clinic where Rose now saw a doctor who did not rush through appointments. The deed carried 2 names, Rose Carter and Annie Carter. No company owned it. No trust could pull it back. Their lawyer, a patient woman named Marlene Price, had read every page before Rose signed anything. Rose had made William wait 3 weeks for an answer, then told him yes over the phone with the same tone she used ordering catfish at a diner. Annie still woke early some mornings expecting to hear the old pipes in their rented house. Sometimes she reached for the cracked phone that was no longer on her nightstand. The police still had it, locked in evidence, though the video had already been copied, authenticated, and played in court at the preliminary hearing. The first time Annie heard her own recording in that courtroom, her hands went cold. Ray Voss stared at the table. Evan Cole stared at the floor. Charles Harrington looked straight ahead, jaw tight, as if the room had offended him by existing. The judge denied bond again. Afterward, Detective Bennett met Annie in the hallway and handed her a paper cup of water. You did fine, Bennett said. I didn't do anything. The video did. You showed up. Evidence doesn't walk itself into the light. That line stayed with Annie. The case was not over. But it had weight now. Charges had multiplied. Attempted murder, conspiracy, witness intimidation, use of an explosive device, obstruction, financial fraud. Federal investigators had joined after money trails led through shell companies in 3 states. Harrington Development spent weeks under review, and William did not block it. Some board members resigned before anyone asked them to. Others discovered that loyalty looked different once subpoenas arrived. William changed too, though not in a way that made a neat headline. He did not become soft. He still spoke like a man used to decisions, but he listened longer. He stopped saying "my sights" and started saying "our responsibilities." He ordered every abandoned Harrington property secured, surveyed, and cleared of hazards. At Rose's insistence, he also funded safe scrap collection points in several neighborhoods, places where people could bring metal, cans, and wiring without climbing fences or risking injury. The board hated the cost. William told them, then resign. Some did. The program's official name was the Carter Community Safety Fund. Rose refused to let him call it the Annie Carter Fund. My granddaughter is not your billboard, she had said. William had accepted that immediately. Carter Community Safety Fund, then. Better. Sounds like it belongs to more than one person. Annie began classes at Atlanta Metropolitan State College in a technical program that still sounded too large when she said it out loud. Digital forensics. Evidence handling. Data recovery. She bought notebooks, a used laptop, and a backpack that did not smell like rain. The first week, she sat in the parking lot for 10 minutes before going in because part of her still expected someone to ask why she was there. No one did. A month after the hearing, William came by the new house on a Saturday afternoon. No cameras, no assistant. Marcus drove him but stayed in the car until Rose waved him in and told him there was lemonade in the kitchen. William brought the old canvas sack. Annie had left it in Marcus's SUV the night everything happened. It had sat in evidence for a while because several cans had rolled across the crime scene. Now it was clean, folded, and tied with the same frayed cord. Annie took it from him slowly. I wondered where this went. Detective Bennett released it. Rose looked over from her chair. A sack coming home after court. That's a new one. William gave a small smile. I thought Annie should have it. Annie ran her fingers over the worn canvas. For years, the sack had meant bills, tired feet, and counting pounds at the recycling yard. Now it meant something else too. Not pride exactly. Not pain alone. A reminder that the world could look at the same thing and see either trash or testimony. She hung it on a hook in the small shed behind the house. Not hidden, not displayed. Kept. Later that day, they sat on the porch. Rose had lemonade. Marcus had coffee because, as Rose said, some men don't know how to relax without bitterness in a cup. William sat in the rocking chair Rose had argued into place. Annie stood by the steps, watching children ride bikes down the street. She had not lived here long enough to know every neighbor yet, but people waved now. Some knew the story, Some only knew Rose made good cornbread and had opinions about lawn care. William said, "I spoke to the city this week." Rose lifted an eyebrow. "That sounds expensive." "It may be. We're turning the south side into a training center." Annie turned. "The construction site?" "Yes. After the investigation clears the property fully. Trade classes, safety training, equipment certification. We'll partner with local colleges, paid apprenticeships." Rose looked at him carefully. "And whose idea was that?" William looked at Annie. "Hers." "Partly." Annie frowned. "I didn't say that. You said people shouldn't have to climb through fences to survive. That's not a business plan." "No. It's better. It's a reason." Rose nodded once, approving before she could stop herself. Annie sat on the porch step. "What happens to Charles?" William's face changed, but he did not look away. "Trial, unless he takes a plea. His lawyers are trying to blame Evan and Ray. It won't hold. Do you visit him?" "No." "Do you want to?" William looked down at his hands. "Some days. Then I remember Annie Carter should have minded her business." Rose's mouth hardened. William continued, "And I decide grief can wait until justice is done." No one spoke for a while. A breeze moved through the porch. Rose's wind chime tapped once, then again. Annie said, "I used to think justice meant somebody finally believed you." William looked at her. "What do you think now?" "I think that's only the beginning. Justice is what happens after they believe you, whether they protect you, whether they fix what made it easy not to believe you in the first place." Rose smiled faintly. "School is doing something to you. Good things, I hope." "Mostly." Marcus laughed into his coffee. William leaned forward. "You're right. Belief is not enough." Annie looked at him. "No, but it mattered." He nodded. It did. As the sun lowered, Rose went inside to check on supper even though everyone told her not to. Marcus followed because she handed him a bowl of green beans and said, "Make yourself useful." William remained on the porch with Annie. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small box. "This is not a gift." Annie gave him a look. "That's how people introduce gifts. It's your old phone." She froze. He handed her the box. Inside was the cracked phone in a clear evidence sleeve. Marked released. The corner of the screen was still broken. The case still had a faded sticker on the back. Bennett said they no longer need the original in custody. "The forensic copy is certified." Annie held the box carefully. "I thought I'd never see it again. It did a lot of work for a broken thing." Annie smiled a little. "So did I." William's face softened. "Yes, you did." She looked at the phone, then across the street where a neighbor was watering flowers. "I don't want to fix the screen." "No?" "No, not yet. It reminds me that something doesn't have to look whole to tell the truth." William sat with that. Inside, Rose called, "Annie, if Mr. Harrington is staying for supper, tell him we say grace before eating. And nobody negotiates with me about it." William stood. "I wouldn't dare." Annie laughed then, not because the past was gone, but because it no longer owned every breath. That night, after supper, after William and Marcus left, Annie stood in the shed with the old sack hanging on one wall and the cracked phone on a shelf beside it. Rose came to the doorway, leaning on her cane. "You keeping both?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Some things are not pretty, but they are honest." Annie turned off the shed light and walked back toward the house with her grandmother. The porch lamp glowed warm against the blue shutters. Somewhere across town, the tower still carried William Harrington's name. Somewhere in the court system, Charles waited behind locked doors. Somewhere on the south side, the abandoned site was quiet behind new fencing, no longer free to swallow people who had been left out of safer places. Annie looked at the street, at the ordinary houses, at Rose beside her. She had not planned to become brave that day. She had planned to sell cans. But courage did not always arrive dressed like courage. Sometimes it came with dusty gloves, a shaking hand, and an old phone with a cracked screen. Sometimes it came from someone the world had already decided not to hear. And sometimes justice began with one voice cutting through the noise, refusing to whisper when a life depended on being loud. "Throw that bag away," Annie had screamed, and because she did, a man lived, a lie broke, and a family that had been surviving finally began to breathe. The lesson of this story is that courage does not always come from people with money, power, or titles. Sometimes it comes from someone society has learned to ignore. Annie had no protection, no influence, and no reason to believe anyone would listen to her, yet she chose to speak when staying silent would have been safer. Her voice saved a life because she trusted what she saw and refused to look away. The story reminds us not to judge people by their clothes, their work, their race, or their place in the world. Truth can come from the quietest corner, and justice often begins when one brave person dares to be heard. This video is a work of fiction created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and situations are not real and do not represent any actual people or true stories. The content is intended for storytelling and emotional illustration only.